Welcome to Mic Drop, the podcast where relevancy is irrelevant and we don't give a shit about your feelings. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, it's both an honor and a pleasure to bring to you my next guest to the podcast. He was in the U.S. Navy for 6.5 years, 4 of which on active duty as a Navy SEAL. He's sniper qualified, a comm guy, and also JTAC for you civilian assholes that's calling in bombs. He's the author of a phenomenal book called City of Death. And most importantly, he's the founder of a nonprofit called Stronghold Rescue, which we'll get into really deep in this podcast. He's had so many stomach bugs from traveling overseas that Giardia now actually catches him. Have you shit solid in 3 years?
No, I haven't.
Yeah.
No. Lots of wet wipes.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the podcast, Ephraim Mattos.
Dude, thanks for having me on, man. This is super cool. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on. Really interesting book and really a unique story. You know, I've had a number of SEALs on, a number of special operations guys. What you've done, and that's typically the focus, right, is that a lot of people, you know, we bring these guests on, they talk about their military time, which we will. But you have a pretty unique story in terms of after your service of what you're doing, and so we'll get heavy into that. But I'd like to take a quick minute to give a shout out and recognition to our amazing sponsors, Origin Labs, the maker of all of Jocko's products, as well as their own line of supplements, boots, jeans, gis. Phenomenal company to work with that's been supporting us now for about 6 months, and I really can't thank them enough for just the amazing support that they give us and freedom to do what we do. And they make a phenomenal product. Jocko's an amazing guy. All of the supplements and such that they offer are super clean, incredibly effective. I use a number of them. Just a phenomenal American company that you really can't go wrong by getting behind. Which leads me to the other sponsor, which is Bub's Naturals. One of my closest friends, Glenn Doherty, his nickname was Bub, was killed in Benghazi. His high school best friend, or childhood best friend rather, and another gentleman started this organization, this company, Bub's Naturals, providing MCT oil powder and collagen powder, both of which I've been consuming while we've been sitting here in my coffee. I use the shit out of that, and one of the neatest things about this company is that 10% of all of their sales goes to the Glenn Doherty Memorial Foundation, which is a phenomenal group out of Glenn's hometown of Boston. They do a great job with veterans. I encourage you to check them out and buy the products because you're helping out Glenn's Memorial Foundation. So appreciate those sponsors and check both of them out. You know, I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to come here and share your story with us.
Of course, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. What's the nastiest thing you've ever eaten overseas?
I'm going to go with jungle rat. They call them squirrels, but they're just rats that live in the trees.
Do you have coronavirus? Is that what's happening?
Yeah, I have coronavirus.
That's
yeah, I'm here to bring it to Dallas.
That's
yeah, it's disgusting.
Yeah, so jungle rats?
Yeah, jungle rats. So they chop them up, and then you're pretty much eating bone and a little bit of meat, and then they throw in these horribly, extremely hot peppers. And so, but then like middle of the night, you're humping through the jungle in the middle of the night. That's all there is to eat. And you're like, all right, well, looks like I'm eating this.
Yeah. Where was that at?
Burma. Yeah. Otherwise known as Myanmar.
Yeah. What is the biggest contrast between the U.S. and the worst or some of the terrible places you've been that you see that kind of frustrates you here?
Something that frustrates me here?
Well, the biggest contrast, right? So the biggest contrast between the U.S. and other places that you've been that frustrates you?
I'd say, well, one of the things I was actually thinking about it this morning is the one thing I like about America, and this is going to sound really weird, but people actually follow the traffic signals, and driving is actually very, very safe here. Most other places that you go to, it's kind of this free for all, and in a lot of developing countries, it's kind of this free for all on the road, and everybody uses their horns to communicate. So, for example, if you go to India, they don't use turn signals. They don't do any of that stuff. They honk. Everything is honking. So all day, all night, it's insane. It'll drive you absolutely up the wall.
So it's the traffic here that you notice.
Yeah.
Um, what's an instance, or what instance were you the most convinced that you were going to die?
Definitely the episode that I talk about in the book where I ended up getting hit. That was, yeah, in Iraq. We launched a rescue mission into ISIS territory to get a little girl and a man out of a pile of bodies that had been massacred by ISIS. And yeah, I was like, all right, I'm for sure going to die today. Sort of, you're essentially charging the machine gun nest. ISIS is on two sides. They have the high ground, at least 100 fighters, and all you have is a smoke screen and a tank, which you're trying to hide behind. But they have the flank, so it only protects you from one side. Yeah, so that was definitely the day I was like, all right, well, today I'm going to die, but you know,
Yeah.
teams got stuff to do.
Yeah. What is there anything in particular that was going through your mind then, in terms of big picture stuff or life flashing before your eyes, or what was going through your mind then, other than the obvious?
Yeah. Well, actually, there were two very distinct thoughts that went through my head. Well, first of all, when we heard about, or when we saw the girl, this little girl in this pile of bodies, I mean, immediately we knew we were going to have to go get her. There was no option about, every single one of us, we knew that we would die trying if we had to do it. So there was like, hey, this has to be done, and we're the only ones who can do it. But when we actually got out there and the mortar and machine gun fire started, there were at one point I took a knee in this small ditch, and there's a dead man, a dead Iraqi man, about 5 or 6 feet from me, and I as I sat in the ditch, that's kind of when I had these thoughts. I took a knee, and two thoughts went through my head. One was, A, I'm going to die, but B, uh, we have to do something to get that girl out. And then the other thing too, it's going to sound super moto, but it was true, man. Is like I thought about the SEAL Creed, where it talks about the reputation of the SEAL teams, and I thought, because I started going into shock. I could feel myself going into shock. My arms and legs stopped working because I was so terrified. I was absolutely horrified. I was like, okay, I'm going to die today. And obviously that's not a comfortable position to be in, but I was like, I can't pass out. I have to go accomplish this mission. And a lot of it was that, um, that reputation of the SEAL teams. And I was like, I can't, I have no choice but to continue forward because I earned my trident. And I actually was weird. My life didn't flash before my eyes. I just thought about some of the, some of my friends and stuff who had been killed in training and in combat. And I was like, I can't let them down. I have to do this.
Yeah.
So,
Do you think that there's an element of, that the training that takes place where that's, I wouldn't say it's beat into you, but you're kind of inspired to the point where that becomes part of you? Do you find, that your experiences going through buds and all of the, extensive training that we do, that was a big contributing factor to that, or was there something else?
no, that's definitely a big contributing factor to it. But you can train and train and train all you want to, but when it comes down to the moment of sort of making the choice to go into a situation where you're going to die, that's a struggle that you have to have in your head every single time. You can kind of build a muscle memory to say, hey, I'm going to live my life by principle. I'm going to do the right thing no matter what it costs. And that's sort of a generic way of saying it. But when it comes time to actually doing it, you have to make that decision over and over again. Whereas, going to your rifle or going to your secondary when your rifle jams or whatever, that's an instinct that's kind of built in. But the decision and overcoming fear, that's a decision you have to make that decision every single time. As you're on an operation. When you're getting shot at, and like and when you're getting shot at accurately, it's like, hey, like,
Yeah.
dudes are going to get hit right now. You're afraid every single time. Yes, your training takes over, but yeah, you have to, I guess, make the decision each and every time. It doesn't get easier. If anything, it gets harder. The more you've seen people get hurt, the more you've seen people get hit, because it's no longer this deep, or it's no longer this esoteric concept that happens to other people. It's like, wow, this could happen to me too. So, yeah, I mean, so it's a mix of both. But yeah, just being a SEAL, I when I thought about the trident, I was like, dude, I can't not earn my trident,
Yeah.
today kind of thing.
Yeah. Were there other instances, either since or even before, I guess, where you found yourself in that same position and mentality?
Yeah, so only once, because this was sort of in extremis. These situations are sort of in extremis. It was actually my first firefight ever. Afghanistan, Overwatch. We're on some mountainside, and I was my first mission ever, and I was carrying the Mark 46 machine gun, and I was on the flank, completely exposed on a sort of downhill angle. So I had zero cover. I had a couple of small rocks about the size of my fist in front of me. They covered nothing except for my toes, and that gunfight initiated with several Taliban snipers trying to take me out because I was the most exposed guy, and I was downhill a little bit. So the rest of the team, they could shoot up the rest of the team if I got hit, and they had to come get me. But yeah, so these bullets started coming in. The first one landed about 9 feet from me to my right. And I was like, oh, okay, sniper. So I screamed sniper. I dropped down, got behind my machine gun. I had no idea where it was coming from. And then I looked to my right just as a second bullet came in. It was bullet number 2 was 3 feet away. And I was like, okay, this third bullet's going to be right on. These guys know exactly where, know exactly their distance and windage. Their elevation was perfect. It was just they were trying to correct for wind. And so I just I hid behind my machine gun, put the crosshair on a tree line, and then just literally held the trigger and I stopped looking at my sights, and I literally just put my head down, so that way my helmet would hopefully absorb the impact of this third bullet. And sure enough, third bullet came in, landed right between my legs. I felt it explode. All the rock shrapnel and stuff hit me between the legs. It didn't injure me at all. And then from that point on, it was just a full on gunfight. Tons of bullets coming in, landed in between me and the other guys that were kind of near my position. But as far as the mindset, though, this is my first mission ever.
Welcome to Afghanistan.
Yeah, my first instinct, of course, when the bullet came in, I was like, oh, I should probably run for cover, but there was no cover, and I would have to run past the other guys to get behind cover. And I was like, nah, that's not going to happen. It was just purely out of, I guess, pride, purely out of, I'm not going to let my team down. Yeah. And I'd rather take a bullet right now than even to hear a joke afterwards about me running from a bullet or something. Yeah. So I was like, no, man.
Yeah. Did you guys ever find out or locate where exactly it was coming from and deal with it? Or
we didn't locate exactly where it's coming from, but it was several guys in the tree line, and we brought in the A-10s, and they made quick work of the tree lines.
Do you know about how far away they were?
Yeah, they were about 600 to 700 yards out.
So they were using something other than AKs then?
Oh, for sure, yeah. Probably a Dragunov. Yeah. We had Chechen snipers in the area as well. Yeah.
Well, fucking right on. What is your favorite U.S. luxury / guilty pleasure that you'd say we largely take for granted? Other than the traffic?
Sleeping in a bed. Yeah. Sleeping in an actual bed. That's always my my biggest thing when I got to actually get back to like a hotel room and sleep on a bed with clean sheets. I'm always, that's always my favorite thing.
Do you have a specific mattress you use here in the States?
No, anything that's not the ground, I'm happy with.
Yeah. What is this is a question I ask everybody. What does your morning routine consist of when you're not traveling, just here in the States?
Okay. Yeah. So my morning routine is, first of all, I'm big on getting my full 7 to 8 hours of sleep. Get up and
what time?
Usually like 9:30ish, because I usually will get work done kind of in the evenings, and sometimes I'm usually up till 1, 2 o'clock in the morning kind of thing. Then it's usually check emails, check social media, see what's going on, make sure everything's good with my organization, Stronghold, making sure all my teams and stuff are all taken care of. Usually, that usually takes an hour or 45 minutes kind of thing, and then usually go to the gym, either swimming or lifting, because my back's all messed up, so I'm not running right now. And then it's usually on with my day right around lunchtime, and just usually writing or working on just different projects. So it's a myriad of of insanity.
Do you eat anything first half of the day, or?
Yeah, well, I usually do relatively. I usually do intermittent fasting pretty much every single day.
That's not really intermittent then, is it?
What's that?
So it's not really intermittent then if you do it every day, right?
Well, that's true. I gotcha. So I'll usually take some supplements in the morning, just real simple stuff like D3, B12, and chia seeds. I'll just have some chia seeds and water just for some good hydration and electrolytes to get my day started. Some coffee, some tea sometimes. I like to switch it up a little bit. I don't drink coffee every day. I don't drink tea every day. I try to keep it balanced out because I don't want to get too dependent on
Yeah.
one substance or another.
Yeah. Other than the heroin, right?
Other than the heroin, yeah.
What?
That's why I really travel.
Yeah. You got to keep the supply routes open.
Exactly.
What? So where are you originally from? Where did you spend your childhood?
I grew up in Milwaukee. Grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Right next to General Mitchell Airport there.
And what was it like growing up there? Because me being from northern Iowa, it's a much smaller, town, I think, than Milwaukee. But can you describe kind of your childhood and talk to us about what that was like?
So I had a really strange childhood. I was raised in a independent fundamental Baptist church. So every single day, and also the school was run by the church.
Mm.
So every single day, I got up of my entire childhood. I got up, put on a tie, and went to either school or church. So 5 days a week was school.
Shit.
Obviously, Saturday mornings was like Saturday, like outreach ministries, and then Sunday was obviously church, and we went to church. And then also Wednesday night was church. So we went to church 3 times a week: Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, plus Sunday school. And Saturday ministries. Yeah. So my entire childhood revolved around going to church, and it was kind of like I said, a fundamentalist version of it. And so it just, I mean, it wasn't a cult. Everybody's super nice. They were, good people.
That's the first thing people in a cult say is,
it's not a cult. I swear.
Just drink the Kool-Aid. It's not a cult.
Well, yeah, when I was in the teams, everybody's like, oh yeah, Mattos, this guy's from a cult. Yeah, he grew up in a cult. But no, it was just, real old school traditional values. I mean, girls weren't allowed to wear pants. You couldn't go to like movie theaters and things like that. But and when I, right around the age of 15 or 16 is when I realized, I wanted to be a SEAL, and I realized that I didn't want to necessarily go into like the ministry or something like that. And but looking at the time, I was kind of mad about how I grew up. But looking back at it now, I'm actually really glad that I grew up that way. I grew up very innocent, very in a very strong community atmosphere. Lots of good rules and good, just I guess just good old fashioned values that I really appreciate now. Looking back, I'm like, oh, that's actually a really good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so in terms of like the neighborhood and like, were you in a neighborhood where most people were that way? Was it like a small community?
No. Everybody had normal jobs and lived, normal places. I grew up lower middle class, regular neighborhood. I grew up riding my bike outside and building forts and building ramps and and in this winter, of course, building snow forts and all that stuff, running around playing army with my friends, kind of thing. Yeah.
So with that kind of fundamentalist background, do you think that there's an element of that kind of inspired or motivated you to do what you do now, and I guess also join the Navy and become a SEAL? Was the drive to serve inspired by that fundamentalist religious background, you think?
I think that had a lot to do with I think it had a lot to do with shaping who I am. So one of the things that I experienced, and I was very fortunate to experience, so obviously I grew up in a like lower middle class white family from the Midwest, right? But I mentioned the Saturday morning ministries. On Saturday mornings, we basically would do church for kids essentially. And so what we would do is we would take buses, go into these different different like poor neighborhoods, and bring the kids to church, and so they could have a day where they go to church and get out of the house a little bit. And the route that I was on was actually going into like the worst part of Milwaukee. It was a 99% black neighborhood, extremely poor, extremely high crime, and all while growing up, I was knocking on these people's doors at at 9 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday kind of thing, and I was always invited into the house. So I got to see that the rest of the world doesn't live like I lived. Like most of the time you grow up as a kid and you're thinking, oh, this is the way that the world is, right? But I got to see from a very young age, like, no, even just a couple miles down the road, people don't have it as good as you have it, and people are struggling. And again, the rest of the world isn't exactly, like how you understand it to be. And so I think that kind of put this seed in my heart to kind of realize like, oh man, people need help. And when I joined the Navy, it was like I wanted to truly was like, I want to serve my country. I want to help people by killing bad guys. That's that's my way of helping. That's what I want to do. So yeah, I think it absolutely affected very much who I am to this day. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, it sounds like it would be almost impossible to, to not draw some sort of correlation with that. Can you kind of, I guess, describe the difference between the religious, call it a sect or, preference that you had growing up, as compared to, say, a more mainstream? Was it just the frequency with which you guys went to church,
I think honestly, most of the values are the same. Most of the political views are the same. Most of the principles are the same. The biggest difference was just they call it legal in religious terms. They call it legalism, where you just have a whole bunch of rules. So we had lots of very strict rules. Again, the girls can't wear pants. Even so when they're wearing a skirt, it has to be 3 inches below their knee, even when they're sitting down. You can't go to movie theaters, can't listen to any kind of rock and roll music, anything with a drum beat in it, you can't listen to it. So
it
just
sounds like Footloose, for Christ's sake.
yeah, well, that's kind of what. Yeah, that's very close to how I grew up. Yeah,
Yeah.
but it wasn't mean and vindictive. It wasn't like that at all. It was just there was just these sort of strict rules. And like I said, it was looking back at it now, it was odd. But growing up, I was like, oh man, this is just the
Yeah.
way life is.
Were there other kids in this community church that you had that broke the rules, and if so, what happened to them?
I mean, yeah. So when you went to school, so my school was kindergarten through 12th grade, and there was 75 kids in the entire school, and that was so I grew up, in a class with four other people. So uh, when you broke a rule, you got demerits, and when you got a demerit, for example, like if your hair wasn't cut properly, you'd get 5 demerits. But and if you got 125 demerits in a semester, you got kicked out of school or you got suspended or something, right? Um, and so yeah, 5 demerits for not having a correct haircut, 5 demerits for not having the right kind of socks. But like bigger infractions were things like, okay, if you went to a movie theater, right, that's like 50 demerits.
What?
Yeah.
So I'm curious. I guess I mean, did you ever question? And my question is, what is the the purpose and the opposition to rock and roll music, movie theaters,
Hmm.
etc.? I get the dress code thing. That is what it is.
Hmm.
But what's the issue with going to a fucking movie?
So it was weird, right? And I remember growing up thinking it was weird because you could watch whatever movies you wanted to at home. You just couldn't go to a movie theater, which is just kind of bizarre. But it had something to do. The reasoning they gave us was they said, you need to be different than the rest of the world, and the rest of the world goes to movie theaters, so you shouldn't go to movie theaters. And that was kind of the idea behind it. But but then I was like, but everyone else drives cars. Like everyone, like so
Yeah.
what? But we can do that, but we can't do this over here. I'm watching the same exact movie when it comes out at the library. I'm going
Yeah.
to get my VHS tape and go get it. So it didn't make a ton of sense. The music thing was they were very big on they were very big on explaining to us the power of music, and it's something that I still believe to this day. Like music is extremely powerful in how it affects us, but with the drum beats and all these different things, they talked about basically how they use drum beats and like satanic rituals in Africa kind of thing. But then a lot of the lyrics and stuff are about sex, drugs, rock and roll, and breaking the law or whatever. So they just didn't want us listening to any of that kind of stuff.
Not even Christian rock.
No, Christian rock was a no go as well
Yeah.
because there was drum beats in it. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds pretty fucking bizarre, if I'm being honest.
Oh, no, it's totally bizarre. It's
Yeah.
completely bizarre. But yeah, but like I said, growing up, I didn't realize that it was weird at all. But that's why I went around the age of 15, 16, I got a job at McDonald's because I wanted to get out there and make my own money. And yeah, it was interesting because I started interacting with people that I never really interacted before, just normal,
Yeah.
average other kids, and started realizing things were a little bit off.
Did you have siblings?
Yeah, I have one older brother.
Older brother.
Yeah.
What did he toe the line too, or did he start to get a wild hair when he was about that same age?
No, he toed the line the entire time. He's a really good dude. He's like one of the best human beings that I know. But so he graduated high school from that school, and then worked for Coca-Cola for a couple of years, and then he actually ended up traveling the world doing humanitarian stuff for about like a year and a half, 2 years. Lived in India for a few years, working at an organization there. So also he's part of my influence too because I started realizing more about the world of humanitarian work and kind of what that entails. from him. But no, he never went off. Never went off the deep end, as they say. That was me.
Yeah. Did do you and your parents, or I guess does your parents, do your parents still kind of abide by those codes and still live in that manner? Or
No, not at all.
really?
Well, the values are still there, and like I said, the values are really good. But just as far as like the legalism of, okay, you can't listen to rock music or you can't go to movie theater, like all that stuff they don't follow. But yeah, they still believe in the same, old school principles and stuff, and most of which I still believe in as
Yeah.
well. Yeah.
Do you listen to music now?
Oh yeah, I love music. Yeah.
Is there anything that is carried over that people may find as odd that you've brought with you rule wise?
As far rule wise, no, probably not.
Yeah,
No.
pretty normal guy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Did you play? Did you
The
play any
teams ruined me.
sports? Yeah, no shit. They'll fucking ruin everybody. Did you play any sports growing up? Was there any problem with
Yeah, actually, sports was actually a big part of our life. So actually, the church that I went to in the school was actually built on a basketball court. This beautiful a basketball court, and so we had this full length, proper yeah, basketball court with these basketball hoops that we would use a little pulley system, and you'd bring the hoops back down, kind of thing. And yeah, man, I grew up playing basketball. That was our thing, and I loved it. And we also played soccer as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, directly from the school. So we'd play other schools and things like that from other from other towns and cities that had similar beliefs as us, kind of thing. Yeah.
That's cool. The Bible Sports Network.
Bible Sports Network. Yeah, exactly.
All right, so you graduate from there, and then you decide, during that time, or I guess midway through high school, you decide you want to be a SEAL. Did you train in particular for coming to Buds, or you just try to stay in shape, or like shake out kind of the process from when you decided, yeah, I want to be a team guy, to actually joining the Navy and starting that process?
So it was actually a very strange process as well. So when I decided that I wanted to be a SEAL, I was around the age of 15 or 16, and so again, I grew up in this community. Is the only thing I ever knew. But so I was going into my 11th grade year of high school, and I told my parents, I was like, I'm not going back to the school. I'm just not doing that. I want to be a SEAL. I want to go do other things, and my attitude was not I'm rebelling and I hate these people. It wasn't that at all. It was just I respectfully disagree. I've seen I want to take a different path in life. And so right around the age, so when I was 16, going into my 11th grade year of high school, my parents would not let me go to a public school. So I had to homeschool myself. And that was their deal. It was like, they're like, all right, you're not going to public school, and you're not, if you don't want to go back there, that's fine, but you're going to have to homeschool yourself, and we're not going to tutor you, kind of thing. And it wasn't out of malice. They were just like, we don't have time to tutor you, and so my entire, I call it my year of darkness. My entire 11th grade year of high school, I spent it essentially alone. And I was working third shift at McDonald's. So I'd go to 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. 5 days a week at McDonald's. And then I would go to the library, or no, sorry, I'd go to the YMCA to practice swimming, because I could do like a doggy paddle kind of thing, but I didn't really know how to swim. So I also joined a lifeguarding class to force me to learn how to swim. Counterintuitive, I know, but it worked. And so I'd work from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m., go to the Y, drown for a little bit, and then go to the library and try and teach myself algebra and these other things, which was actually I'm actually very grateful for that time as well, because it taught me how to teach myself new skills, which obviously was great for being in the teams. But yeah, I basically did that for my entire year, and then so like I said, I joined a lifeguard class that taught me, that basically forced me to learn how to swim. And then, yeah, man, I just started just doing push-ups and pull-ups. I didn't know anything about working out properly, or sprints, or high intensity interval training, or lifting weights. I'd never lifted a weight in my life. I just did, push-ups and pull-ups and stuff like that. So yeah, that's what I did.
This is like 2011, 2012 time frame.
This is 2009. Okay. 2009, yeah. And then 2010, my parents finally let me, for my senior year, go to a public high school. So I went to public high school.
How big of a fucking culture shock was that?
It actually wasn't that bad, but that's because the school I went to it was just a really good school. It was named Ronald Reagan High School, and it was more of a focus on academics. So they didn't really have huge sports teams or anything like that, but it was just really focused on academics. And so all the other kids that were there, they were everybody was very focused on going to college, kind of thing. So it actually wasn't bad at all. Yeah.
When you were there, did you find going from such a small school that has such a religious influence to teaching yourself for a year, and then now, the last year of traditional K through 12 schooling, you're in the public school system, where did you fit in terms of competency? Like, were you right where you should be, behind, ahead?
Probably a little bit ahead, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. So the school,
that's kind of pathetic for, especially if that's a public school that's more focused on academics. Like, that doesn't say much for, I mean, not that I'm a huge fan of public schools. I mean, I went to it. The kids go to them. I think they're important in their own ways, but in terms of their ability to teach, I think they're severely fucking lacking. And I think that's just another clear cut example of it. What I think they do teach is how to deal with shitheads, and how to deal with life, because I mean, the stuff that goes on, I know when I was in high school, and even, again, going through it again, kind of in a 2.0 version through the kids, it's staggering the shit that goes on at big public schools. But at any rate, so you found yourself ahead, huh?
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of that also had to do too with the fact that, growing up in this super tiny school, I mean, you have 5 kids in the class, literally.
Yeah.
And because of that, though, you really get a ton of one-on-one time with the teachers.
Yeah.
And that's something I didn't really realize. But yeah, you don't have a class of 30, 40, 50 kids trying to sit there and learn algebra. And if you're in the back and you don't understand what's going on, it's very easy in a public school for the teacher to kind of skip over you, because they have 50 other kids they got to deal with.
Yeah.
But growing up, it was like, no, there's 5 kids in the class. And so if you don't understand what's going on, it's, a very small classroom, like the size of this room. And you're just sitting there, learning directly from a teacher, kind of thing.
So I can assume then, so you graduated high school, did you go straight into the Navy?
Yeah. I joined up before I finished high school.
So that was the big fucking culture shock. Going to boot camp had to be a slap in the face, at least to a little bit.
Yeah. That honestly, that was the biggest culture shock. So yeah, I get to basic, and which it was actually funny. So basic training is only like an hour and a half away from my house where I grew up. So I get in. So I was hoping and expecting, the Marine Corps experience, where the bus pulls up and the drill instructor's like, everybody out of here. And I was like, I was all excited. I was all excited for that, but the reality was, no, they put me in a van with one other dude, and they drive us down there in the middle of the day. And this one other guy I'm going with, driving down to basic training, he was joining the Navy band or whatever. So he had like a master's degree in tuba or trumpet or trombone or something, like an actual master's degree. And I was like, okay, that's cool, but it was so funny. We're driving down there, and the entire time he's on the phone with his wife. He's like, I miss you already, and I just missed you. It's like, dude, you've been gone for 30 minutes, man.
Is that what he sounded like?
Oh yeah, he was like, yeah, it was pretty much. It was just like, all right, dude. But yeah, and then so then I walk in, and just one of the instructors comes walking by. They're like, hey, are you guys here for boot camp? And we're like, yeah.
No shit.
And they're like, all right, go stand at attention over there.
Fucking Christ.
And then and then 10 hours later, the buses show up with all the other guys. And then we, started basic. But yeah, that was a huge culture shock, because, growing up, the entire, I had no concept. Like, I don't know how to explain it. I had no concept of what of these other cultures were like. And so it was so funny. I mean, I'd heard of what dip was, but I'd never seen anybody dip before. And everybody's everybody's walking around basically like, man, I wish I had a dip, man. I just want to chew. And I'm like, well, I don't even know what that is. Like, what are you talking about? But then, yeah, guys from all kinds of different places. And that was quite the experience. Yeah.
I mean, I'm still reeling so I came in 1996, which makes me feel old as fuck sitting here talking to you. But, then I can tell you, I mean, I flew to boot camp. Even from Iowa, they flew us from Des Moines to Chicago and then picked us up, and it was very similar to, you describing the Marine Corps experience. Like, it was a packed van full of dudes scared shitless, and we pulled up, and as we're getting out, it was just a swarm of fucking, instructors came out just ripping us a new ass, and it started immediately. So, I mean, to me, to hear, they're like, oh, are you here for boot? Like, they didn't even know you were coming.
No clue. There was nobody there waiting for us. I sat in a classroom. Yeah, they gave us our little, the yellow Navy t-shirts, and then the sweatpants or whatever. And they just they said, here, practice your ranks or memorize your ranks. So I sat in a room for 5, 6, 7, 8 hours and just sat there looking at this piece of paper
Jesus.
until everybody showed up, and then I heard all the yelling and screaming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fucking Navy. Oh, God help us. All right.
It was a great start.
Yeah.
Great start.
All right. So you go through boot camp. Were you in the pipeline where you went through like Bud's prep afterwards, or?
Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah.
that is relatively new, at least compared to say most of the guys from that have been on the show and from my generation for sure. Can you talk a little bit about that and what that process is like? So from boot camp, you go into, or in boot camp, were you in a Bud's division or?
Yeah.
Oh,
so
shit.
so yeah. So when I went to boot camp, they call them the 800 divisions. So it's just your division number starts with the number 8. So I was division 804, and we had 105 guys in the division, and 100 of them were there to be SEALs, and 5 of them were there to be divers. And so the 800 divisions are for guys that want to be divers, SWIC, EOD, rescue swimmers, yeah, and diver. And yeah, so every day, or not quite every day, it was like 2 or 3 times a week. We would go to the combat training tank of this big pool, essentially, and there were a couple of SEAL motivators there, and they would put us through these workouts and whatnot. It was actually kind of funny. The first SEAL that I ever saw, I ended up being in the same platoon as him on my first deployment.
No shit.
Yeah, it was kind of funny. So yeah, I'd never even seen a real Navy SEAL until I went to boot camp, and he walked in. I was like, that guy's a SEAL, and sure enough, and I ended up deploying with him later on.
Is he still active?
If he is, he's probably going to be getting out real soon. Yeah. But yeah, so when you finish basic training, I mean, everybody shows up in pretty good shape. So you actually get out of shape in basic training for the guys that want to be SEALs. So then you actually spend 2 months of Bud's prep, and all it is you're working out. You're doing 2-a-day workouts 5 days a week for 2 months straight. That's all it is. And you lift twice a week, you run 3 times a week, and you swim 5 days a week. And you just have these trainers who just put you through all these workouts. It's not a beatdown. It's not super intense. The entire concept behind it is just to make sure that when you show up, you're not going to get injured, or from an overuse injury, and that you're also in a position where you actually have a chance of physically making it through.
Yeah. I mean, from my perspective, I know, the 3.5 years I spent as an instructor that, and even when I was going in ever since, like there's always been a team of assholes trying to figure out how to make more SEALs, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the same thing goes on in fucking horse racing and working dogs. I mean, you name it, is that, when you're talking about genetic code, and there's only so much of it in terms of it being aligned a certain way to fit a very specific and high level skill set like that, there's just only so many of them. What I'm curious of is, did you find that at the end of the 2-month Bud's prep, were you in as good a shape as you were when you joined the Navy or better? And also, do you find now looking back that program is a worthwhile program, and that it's ultimately a good thing for prospective students?
I was definitely in better shape at the end of that. I think most guys were. And I personally believe it's a good program because it teaches you how to work out. It teaches you how to, I guess, the biggest reason why it's there is you know how it is in Buds. Like you have a bunch of guys that end up with like a knee injury or ITB, right? I tried Bud syndrome, because like their legs weren't in a position where they were kind of conditioned for it. They didn't necessarily quit. They weren't a bad dude. It was just, I've never run on sand before. And I'm stationed on a ship somewhere, or I'm coming from, freezing cold Wisconsin. I've never run on sand before. I don't have a clue what that's like. And not that you did a ton of that in Bud's prep, but it gets you to the point where you're no longer prone to injury. That's really what it is. But the attrition rate was exactly the same because the mental aspect doesn't change.
Yeah.
All it does is just make sure that you have a bunch of guys that aren't going to wash out just because, they get an overuse injury because they've never done enough pull-ups or whatever it might be. I think it's worthwhile, personally. Yeah.
I mean, to me, I guess ultimately, if the numbers are the same, to me, it seems like kind of a waste. I get that, these guys aren't going away for injury, but I kind of look at it from a different perspective, is that the mentality of saying you've got to, you really need to take it upon yourself. To me, by not having those is that, no different than you doing what you did as an 11th grader, is that you did it yourself. Is that, to me, like the type of guy that needs to be shown how to do those things. I mean, to me, like if you're a good dude and somebody that's going to actually be an asset to the SEAL teams, you should be a guy that goes and finds out what he needs to be good at before he shows up. He finds out what the testing is going to be like. He finds out what is the schoolhouse gonna be like. What are those experiences going to be like? How can I prepare myself instead of being handheld or spoon fed that information? Because again, ultimately, if the attrition rate is no different, then I mean, that's not a cheap fucking program. And if it's not getting the intended result of creating more or higher success numbers at the end of the year in terms of guys putting tridents on their chests, and what's the fucking point?
Well, I think I totally see where you're coming from. I think one of the other things though was when I was going through, they basically had doubled the class sizes. So I mean, when you show up to Buds, I mean, you're going in with 300 dudes.
Yeah.
And the reason for that was they just they were trying to double the amount of guys that they were putting through, and they just didn't have the time and the money to deal with all the injuries. So that was one of the things as well, is like you have less injuries on the back end. It cost from what I understand, it helps offset the cost of injuries later on for some guy who messes up his knee or whatever. But I totally see where you're coming from, but I think the guys that, and just from what I saw, I mean, the guys who have the mentality to figure it out before they go anyway, those are the guys that are going to make it anyway. It doesn't matter. If you're going to make it, if you're going to make it, you're not going to make it if you're not going to make it.
Yeah, no, I guess the back end thing is a good point. Is that now you've got all these guys that are fucking banged up that you're having to deal with, and it's figuring out the bottom line and how to streamline it. I guess that makes sense. But all right, so you go through and you go into Buds. If you could walk us through kind of your experience in the SEAL teams.
Yeah, so finished Buds, SQT, all that jazz. My first platoon went to Afghanistan, which I was actually very lucky. We were talking about this before.
What team was this?
Team 1, No Fun 1. So it was actually funny. I put on my dream sheet where I wanted to go, and I said, I want to go SDV 573. Those were the teams that I wanted.
You picked SDV?
I did because, well, at the time we were pulling all of our troops out of Afghanistan, and so I was like, dude, if I go to if I go to a regular SEAL team, my chances of actually getting to go on like a full on, kinetic deployment are going to drastically change. So I figured, well, if I go SDV, I know those guys are doing stuff on occasion. It's going to be like, it's not going to be as kinetic, but I'm like, well, at least I'll be doing something real world. So that was my thought, stupid now. But they didn't give me SDV. They didn't give me 3, 5, or 7. They put me at Team 1. And at the time, they referred, Team 1 was No Fun 1 because, right.
It's always been that way. By the way.
Well, at the time, 1 was completely responsible for PACOM and the Philippines. So if you were at 1, you were not going to the Middle East, you were going to PACOM. So when I showed up at Team 1, I mean, there was guys who had done 3, 4 deployments back to back to back to back.
To Guam in the Philippines.
And I was like, dude, F that. So that's what I thought was going to happen to me. I was like, all right, whatever.
You can swear on here, by the way.
Okay. Luckily, I got put in a platoon slated for Afghanistan. And luckily I got to go do that. We were the last, one of the last SEAL platoons that was there, last deployment, literally burn the base, hop on the helos and get out of there. I left right before the platoon did that, but so that was great, man. I got to go and actually, sling lead and crush Taliban souls, and it was great. I loved it. Then after that, my second deployment ended up being to PACOM, and that was really a huge turning point for me. Was at the time the workup cycle was you do 18 months of a workup, and then you do a 6-month deployment. So this in total 2-year cycle. And when I did an 18-month workup and ended up going to PACOM, it was something I couldn't square with myself mentally. I was like, dude, are you kidding me? I just spent 2 years of my life doing nothing. We didn't do anything real world. We did one real world mission, which I can't talk about, but it wasn't anything like that cool. It was like, okay, I got to roll around with live ammo in my gun. Yay, cool. But it wasn't kinetic at all. But it was just, I was like, I can't justify spending 2 years of my life doing this over and over and over again. And yeah, at the time, in 2014, when I was in Afghanistan, that was when ISIS had started doing their thing. So it was kind of funny. We're in Afghanistan, and then I was JTAC, so it was my job to put in air requests and stuff. It was like, hey, we'd like an AC-130, we'd like 17,000 A-10s overhead, please, and lots of Apache gunships. And we usually got it, but then all of a sudden we started hearing these reports of like, oh, there's this new terror group called ISIS, and all of our boys from another platoon at Team One, they're in there dropping CAS on these guys, dropping bombs on these guys. And so then we started putting in air requests like, hey, we're going on a mission. Can we get AC-130s or whatever? And they're like, no, there's no more AC-130s. They're all in Iraq. We're like, wait, what the heck? Like, what's going on? But yes, and then fast forward 2016, deployed to PACOM, and I was just like, dude, it's like I can't do this again.
So I've got two questions that are completely unrelated.
Yeah.
Hopefully this doesn't trick fuck the audience. Just while I'm thinking about it, your time in the Philippines, did seeing the squalor of the people there have an inspiration in terms of what you're doing now, or was it primarily the shit that you saw in a combat zone?
So to clarify, I was not in. I never went to the PI. Never went to the Philippines. I ended up in Indonesia, Guam, Thailand, Taiwan, South Korea.
So I guess
places, yeah.
Southeast Asia, generally speaking.
Yeah, but well, I mean, yeah, to an extent it did. But I kind of already knew about that from being in combat zones. I saw the terrible things that happened out there and just kind of the squalor that people lived in. But yeah, definitely getting out to Southeast Asia and seeing these dense urban places where everybody's just living on top of one another. But again, I'd also heard about a lot of this stuff too from my brother who had traveled around a little bit. So I was kind of aware of it. But then, yeah, seeing it myself was, it was kind of like,
to me. I find myself. We spent about almost 2 months in the Philippines on one of my deployments, and I find myself thinking about those instances and the things that I saw a lot in terms of my children, the things that they find themselves complaining about, and it's hard. Obviously, you can't blame them for being born where they're born and in the sheltered life that they live. It's impossible to relate what we've seen in most of the world in terms of how they live versus here, and how grateful you ought to be for being in that position. But I was just curious if that played a role. The second part of the question, which is more relative to A, what you're doing now, and B, what I guarantee the listener is going to want to hear a little bit about, is your time in Afghanistan. Couple of things. Can you talk about kind of where generally speaking, where you were and what you guys were kind of tasked with doing while you were there?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was in Logar province, and our mission at the time was we were there was a network of terrorists who operated in Pakistan, who were bringing in lots of supplies and weapons and all kinds of stuff through this specific valley coming out of Pakistan. And they were going toward a very large FOB, forward operations base, with an airfield on it. And these Taliban guys were constantly attacking this larger base. And at the time, we were retrograding, right? So security was kind of dropping a little bit, and we were trying to get lots of air flight, lots of airlifts going in and out, getting supplies out and stuff like that. So our mission was, we were actually at they call it a DSP, a district stability platform, which means we were on this tiny little compound in the middle of nowhere. And it was like, maybe 20 or 30 SEALs. And then I think we had 50 or 60, I'm not sure the exact numbers, of some 82nd Airborne guys there who guarded the gates, guarded the perimeter, and we'd go on patrol with them as well. But our mission was basically just to disrupt this network of bad guys coming in with all these weapons. So, and at the time, we were like the farthest American outpost in that sector. And so it was the Wild West. I mean, basically the enemy has unlimited numbers, unlimited ammunition, and they controlled the entire area. So it was just going out and just kind of disrupting that as much as we could, trying to build relationships with the locals. But I mean, they all knew we were leaving in 3 months anyway, so nobody really cared about us. They were trying to steal stuff from us, and it was not a good situation. But yeah, then we'd go out there and lure the Taliban guys into getting into a good gunfight with us, which they always ended up regretting. And that's kind of what we did.
Could you share a couple of those experiences that maybe were pretty hairy, or where something significant happened?
Yeah, so obviously I already talked about the first one, my first gunfight ever. Well, my second gunfight ever, which was 2 days after the first one, they called it a white space patrol. We were just basically just going to walk around and just basically presence patrol, let the people know that we're still there. kind of a pointless thing. But we're walking along this road on patrol, and we see I think it was actually the dog. I think our dog picked up. There was a backpack, this little pink girl's backpack, sitting next to a tree, and the dog sat on it or something, and so whatever, we figured out it was an IED. So our EOD guys came up and they blew it in place. They bipped it, and so this huge mushroom cloud goes up from this explosion. Well, then um, one of the villagers came up and told us, they were like, "Hey, the Taliban knows that you're here, and they're going to ambush you guys right over there, and they're on their way right now." So my platoon chief, and I love him for this, he made the decision. He's like, "All right, well, we're going to get there first, and we're going to ambush them." And so I was just like, "Yes, let's go crush these dudes, man!" It was sick. And so we're literally sprinting as fast as we can through this Afghan town, and then we kind of go off into the countryside. We set up on this tree line. I honestly don't even know how they figured out exactly where it was, but it was right where we were supposed to be. So we set up on this tree line. I was carrying a Mark 46, machine gun. So I set that up on this little mound, and then I got out an extra thing of ammo ready to roll, and yeah, we just sat there for maybe 5 minutes, and then sure enough, we started hearing movement and rustling going on in this tree line, which is maybe 25 yards away. Like it's right there. You could chuck a rock and hit these guys, and so they're kind of in the tree line moving around, and they have no idea that we're there. So actually, it was actually the same SEAL that I saw in boot camp, the first SEAL ever. He was my fire team leader.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, it's at the time I was in his fire team, and he was supposed to initiate contact with a 40 mic grenade, and as soon as that went off, we all knew we were supposed to open fire and ambush these dudes. Well, he this Taliban fighter pops his head out into this clearing, like looking for us or something or other. And this was right as this other guy popped up with this 40 mic grenade launcher. Well, blew the guy in half basically. He just shot him, blew him up, and we just immediately raked these dudes with machine gun fire. We used CS gas on them. It was nuts. And then so as we opened up fire on them in the center, they started we cut down probably, I don't know, probably 10 or 15 guys right in their center line in the tree. So you can't really see them, but you can hear them, and there's bullets are coming back at you, and like they're I don't even know how they survived the initial volley, but so they're firing back at us, and branches and little leaves and stuff are slapping the trees around me and dropping in my face, same as everybody else. And but the guys on the flank, the Taliban guys on the flanks, they tried to attack us on our flanks, and which was pretty much a point blank shootout. And so they were running from the tree line trying to get on our flanks. And so the guys on the SEALs on the flanks, and we actually had some paratroopers with us too, and they're just dropping these guys 10 feet away kind of thing. But when that happened, one of our Afghan allies, he got shot. I got shot like 4 or 5 times, like right in the crotch. And so they're working on him. He's screaming bloody murder. And then also too, the wind shifted, so we'd CS gassed.
Yourselves.
So it's shifted. And so I'm like sitting there crying, not literally crying, but my eyes are burning, and I'm trying to shoot this machine gun. But then we made the decision we had to move back 2 tree lines to call in a medevac. So we moved back 2 tree lines to call in a medevac. As we're moving back, we're bounding and moving. Taliban, I don't know how, but they're still firing back at us. And I was like a secondary or tertiary JTAC. So our primary JTAC, he called in a danger close A-10 gun run. Those guys come in at 100 feet off the deck, and they just blow the living hell out of this tree line. It was amazing. And so we get up, we set up a perimeter to evacuate this Afghan guy. Well, then we started hearing radio chatter that the Taliban were going to attack us from our south, as we're in this perimeter waiting for dust off to come in and get this guy. And it was the weirdest thing, because we were hearing these radio chatter. Hey, Taliban's going to hit you guys from the south. Taliban's going to hit you guys from the south. Well, I was the farthest guy in the south, and so I'm sitting there with my machine gun in a completely open and exposed position. And I talk about this in my book a little bit. So I see these heads, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, cool. Here comes Taliban. I'm totally going to get my 2 confirmed kills. Like, I see a couple of them coming. I'm like, this is going to be awesome. Well, all of a sudden, these 2 little girls pop out from this tree line, and they start running right at me. And they're screaming, and they're crying, and they're terrified. And I'm looking at them, but they're both wearing pink backpacks, just like the one that we had blown up 20 minutes earlier. And so I'm going, oh my goodness, those are potentially suicide vests. The girls were running, and everything was kind of jumpy, so I couldn't quite see their hands. But they were running right at me, and I had no choice. So I was like, I knew, I knew at that point I was like, I have to kill these two little girls. And I waited until the last possible second. And I started screaming at them. I was like, I put the reticle on one little girl's face, and these little girls are maybe, I don't know, 7 and 5, something like that. They're just little things. I put my crosshairs on the first girl's face, and I just was like screaming, like pleading at her, pleading with her, like get away, get away. And I could just see her tears are just going down her face. I was literally pulling the trigger. I was in the process of gently applying pressure to the trigger to shoot her. But then she stopped, and I took my finger off the trigger, and I just started screaming again. And I was like, get away, get away, get away. And so finally she got the hint, turned around, her and her, the other little girl, they turned around and ran away back toward where the Taliban guys were. And, their little pink backpacks, sure enough, was the same exact ones that we'd blown up earlier. And it was like, that was such a horrible experience, because it messed with my head, because I was like, wait, what? And this was actually a very life changing moment for me, because I realized, oh my word, there's little girls that are caught in the middle of this insanity. There's families and there's people caught in the middle of the war, and I knew that on a basic level, of course. You know that on an intellectual level, you're like, oh yeah, there's civilians and there's collateral damage. But then I was like, dude, they're totally screwed. They're in the middle here, and nobody's helping them. And yeah, that was the one thing that actually gave me a little bit of PTSD, a little bit. I don't really say PTSD. It was just more like flashbacks and stuff, because I was so angry. I was so hateful toward like the Taliban dudes, because I was like, who the hell would do that? Who the hell would send two little girls right at some SEALs? Like it didn't compute in my brain. And so we ended up, we were able to get the Afghan guy out of there, and we walked back to base, patrolled back to base, and we were there before breakfast. So it was like this just really bizarre 2 hour excursion into the countryside. But yeah, that was a very poignant experience for me that would really changed just kind of my perception on war and all these other things. And it had also made me very glad too for the training that we went through as SEALs, because everything was, as like all the drills, everything you do, it's always fire discipline. It's always you shoot the intended target, and you never shoot anything that you're not supposed to shoot, right? And I was so grateful for that, because in that super intense moment, my first instinct was not, oh shoot. My first instinct was, let me see your hands. Let me see your hands, because I don't know who's who or what's what. And sure enough, ended up, being able to not, kill these little girls, which I'm very grateful for, because I don't know how I would how I'd live with myself if I made a mistake in that situation. But yeah, so that was a huge experience at a couple of months after my 21st or after my 22nd birthday. So
the savagery that exists in a society that creates men who would do that, I hope, is reflected in that story to the listener, to understand the depths of evil that our service members face on a day-to-day basis. And it's also, I think, a very good example of how shit isn't black and white when civilians do get killed, and when it's portrayed in the media as some guy shot two 10-year-olds or whatever, and most people's initial response is that fucking war criminal motherfucker, fuck that guy, you should go to prison, all that. And hearing a story with all of the backdrop and the details and the mentality that you had, and that experience and how it's affected you, I hope that people absorb that and realize that that's a very real occurrence that our guys have to deal with, and one that again, when a society creates people that are willing and able to do stuff like that, that should be fucking dealt with.
Yeah, absolutely. And another key takeaway that I kind of learned from that whole situation was I developed an entirely new respect for the difficulty of the job of our police officers. I can't imagine having to be in a similar situation to that without the years of SEAL training. I can't imagine just being just a beginner cop with maybe a couple months of experience, and you're out there in these situations where, you know, there's all kinds of crazy stuff's going on.
Yeah, 9-year-old with a pellet gun and whatever.
Yeah, and you're like, well, man, like, what do I do? So man, I have a ton of respect for those guys, for police officers, and their, yeah, man, that's not an easy job. It
Yeah.
is not an easy job to do. I can't imagine being in their shoes.
That's a great point, and I appreciate you bringing it up. We've got a ton of law enforcement and first responder listeners that that I work with, day in, day out, throughout the year in a host of different capacities. But I know that that's something that they struggle with. And again, I think our general population doesn't really understand, the intricacies and the nuance associated with, how these guys have to distinguish and discriminate between somebody worth worrying about versus not. And similarly, you have some cops that are out there that, maybe saw, their partner get smoked by a 15-year-old, that maybe they were like, hey, and he pulled a fast one, pulled a gun out and killed a cop or whatever. And then now you're dealing with that, just like the backpack, one of them you saw blow up. Now you see it again. And so, when people are having to deal with that, like you've got to give them a little bit of fucking breathing room, cops, military, et cetera, is that we're all human beings.
Mm-hmm.
Overwhelmingly people in our shoes don't go over there with the intent on hurting civilians. It's just they get in situations like that. I appreciate you sharing that story. It's fucking powerful. For the rest of that deployment, were there any other operations you went on where something similarly impactful or just, kind of a big deal happened that you can share?
No, there was nothing. I mean, that was that impactful. But yeah, I mean, we would just go out and do more patrols. We'd go and get into some, we just go out and basically pick fights with the Taliban. I mean, one particular fight, we walked into this little village neighborhood area, and I think within 10 minutes of walking in there, we were immediately surrounded and in this gnarly gunfight, and taking fire from literally all sides. And our guys were also shooting, other guys like on the flanks were shooting Taliban fighters at like point blank range because they were just popping up and hitting us from everywhere. And so we strong pointed a home, like like a mud, one of those mud buildings, which are surprisingly strong. And so we get up on the rooftop, and basically our only chance of survival, the only way we're going to survive this, is with the help of the U.S. Air Force. And so sure enough, the other guy who was running primary J attack, he calls in. We got AC-130s, A-10s, F-16s. We had drones overhead. I think we went through 2 or 3 flights of A-10s, so it means they used up all their ammunition and then went back for more. We had Apache gunships. We had F-16s coming in, fast movers, and they don't traditionally get down super low, but I mean, these guys were getting down to 150 feet off the deck, doing point-on-point shooting with their 20 millimeter cannons or whatever.
Wow.
I'm not sure if they use 20 millimeter or 30 millimeter. I should know that, but I don't. But yeah,
maybe it's 25. We'll split the difference.
Yeah, we'll split that. We'll call it 25 millimeter. But yeah, these F-16 pilots, I mean, they're coming in super low, that was incredible to see.
And loud as fuck.
Super loud, yeah, just super loud. But what happened though was, in the middle of all this chaos, one bad thing did happen. Luckily, we got away with it. Was an Apache gunship, for whatever reason, saw us on the rooftop. For whatever reason, thought we were the target. I don't know what the breakdown of communication was between the JTAC and the pilot and all that stuff.
Significant.
It was significant, yeah. So this Apache gunship sees us, thinks we're Taliban, and at the time, the rules of engagement were that no aircraft were allowed to fire directly onto a building. You were not allowed to put any munitions onto a building from the air, and that actually ended up saving our lives, because the Apache gunship, instead of shooting on the rooftop and just smoking all of us, he went off to the right, like maybe 3 feet, which is, first of all, amazing, amazing targeting systems that they have there. But he fired this burst right into a tree, hoping that the shrapnel would hit us all. Luckily it didn't. All the shrapnel went straight down into the ground. So we're just sitting there in the middle of a gunfight, and all of a sudden, these like a half a dozen or so of these little explosions go pop, 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 pop. And just ears are ringing, smoke just going everywhere, kicks up a whole bunch of dust. And so I look over, and we immediately call off the second. That was only the first Apache that came in. The second Apache was going to come in as well. And so we immediately aborted the second aircraft, and what we had an EOD guy about, a foot away from the edge of our building. His job was to make sure nobody was down there to throw up grenades at us. And so he completely disappeared in the smoke. And I thought for sure he was dead. So I started crawling over there, and there was a bunch of other team guys over there as well. And I started crawling over there, and all of a sudden the smoke kind of cleared, and he pops his head up, and he's like, "What the hell was that, man?" So I was like, "Oh, thank God he's still alive." Came out without a scratch. Just simply amazing. It was just like, dude.
When you guys called the second runoff, did you say, "Hey, that's us you're fucking shooting at"? Or
yeah, I think that's what I'm assuming the JTAC told him that. I was monitoring it in one ear, but at the time I was running as a comms guy, so I literally had 3 or 4 different frequencies I was monitoring. But yeah, but then we'd like told those dudes, we're like, "Hey, get out of here, just get out of here." I don't think it ever got reported or anything like that.
You didn't see the guy in the chow hall and
no.
him in the nuts or anything?
Yeah. But then that was funny too, because the Air Force dudes, I mean, they just kept on coming in and just dropping casts for us, and we actually ended up having to run out of there. It was the funniest thing. They basically put down a corridor of fire, behind us and to 2 sides of us, and then we basically just ran back
shit.
to we call
it
that
bad, huh?
Oh yeah, we called it the I won't say the name of it, but it was the name of the town. We called it the mile. So Afghan town mile. Yeah. So we sprinted out of this place, and they're just dropping casts behind us and everywhere.
I mean, that'd give Michael Bay a fucking hard on.
Oh yeah, it was great. Yeah, I was just like, but yes, we run out of there, and it was. I mean, we were still the guys up at the front. We're still getting kills as we were moving back toward our vehicles, which we had a convoy of vehicles that were going to come pick us up out of there. And so yeah, they're still dropping guys at point blank range, and we're running through there. And then we got to the vehicles. And we didn't have enough vehicles didn't show up, so guys were literally just holding on to the side of these MRAPs, just holding on, and they drove us out of there. And it was kind of funny. I walked out of there with 4 bullets.
Wow.
I only had 4 bullets left in my gun, and I'd been very conservative with the amount of shooting I was doing.
Were you at a full 10 mag loadout to start? Or?
I had a 9 mag loadout.
God damn.
Yeah.
Plus
a bunch of radios and batteries and stuff. Yeah.
Do you have any idea, estimate or otherwise, how many guys you were mixing it up with?
I don't know, but based on the guys who had confirmed kills, and then the intel sources that were confirming how many Afghan or how many Taliban guys had been killed, because you have intelligence sources that get you all that info. We killed, I think it was, I want to say like 20 or 25 guys for sure, not to mention who knows how many wounded. So, I mean, I imagine that the force had to be 5 or 6 times that size.
Yeah.
But yeah, we just walked right into the hornet's nest, just like a beautiful morning. We're just walking in there.
Kicked it right the fuck over.
We just kicked it right over, yeah.
God damn, that's fucking nuts.
Yeah.
Was that the worst that you were kind of outgunned or surrounded in the entire deployment?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that was the worst, where it was like, okay, this is going to get a little hairy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before we kind of wrap up this deployment, you mentioned a dog, because I'm so dog heavy, and there's a lot of dog listeners. Any good dog stories from that deployment?
No, well,
other than the backpack.
That was the only one.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was super cool, man. I always go back and watch the deployment video, and there's always, his name was Boris, and Boris is just running around with his handler, just all happy, having a good old time. Yeah,
his handler Natasha. Yeah. What were they there? Because I know, like when I spent my time out on the West Coast with the MPC program, the way that they were scheduling deployments, it's changed a lot. Was that dog with you guys the whole time, or did it rotate in and out during your time there?
He was with us the entire time.
Yeah. And that's the only fucking
yeah. So the way that it worked was the dog handler. We sent a guy specifically from the platoon to go to dog handler school. He got qualified, and then he was assigned a dog, and we did actual workup training with that specific dog, and then deployed with that specific dog.
Did you ever get in the bite suit?
No, I never did.
You want to?
One day, yeah. I'll go for it.
I know a guy.
You know a guy? Okay.
We'll get you fixed.
Put in a good word for me.
Yeah. All right. So you wrap up that deployment, you come back, and then you do 2 years of 18-month workup and go to the Pacific Command or Southeast Asia and realize, fuck, I'm not doing that again. At what point, and what was kind of the light switch moment for you where you said, I'm getting out and this is what I'm doing and here's the inspiration for it?
Mm-hmm. Well, I wasn't sure exactly what I was going to do. There wasn't kind of a light switch moment where I knew exactly what I was going to do. But the the final decision, the final factor was it was actually a near death experience actually. So we were
Another.
another one. We were diving in San Diego Bay. We were using a new dive system for kind of updating our tactics and whatnot. But long story short, we were conducting this dive, and I started feeling a little weird on the dive. And I just thought I was uncomfortable. You know how it is. Like when you're down there, just like it's not
Yes.
fun. It's not, yeah, you're not taking pictures of fish or anything.
It's not the NAUI certification brochure.
It
That's
is
for fucking sure.
no, it is not at all. But yeah, so we finished this dive and we're still underwater. I look over at my dive buddy, and we check our depth. We're like, all right, cool. And then we make eye contact. We give each other the thumbs up. We're going to go to the surface. I put my hand over my head, look up, and watch a little bubble go up. Make sure I'm descending slower than that bubble. The next second, I see one of our new guys from our platoon, who's a super squared away guy. I see him, and he has his mask off and he has his gear off, and he's looking at me. And I was like, dude, why the hell would you take your gear off underwater? Like, what are you doing? That was the first thought that went through my head. But then I tried to move my head, but I couldn't. And that was weird. And I thought, that's weird. So then I move my eyes and I look up, and there's another SEAL over top of me doing CPR on me. And I was completely paralyzed. And I was just like, and I started blinking. And then finally my consciousness started coming back. What had happened was, as I went to the surface, I had passed out, had a seizure, bit my tongue, shit myself, and had been unconscious for about 4 or 5 minutes.
So typical Friday night for you.
Typical Friday night, yeah. Yeah, and so then the rest of the guys had to rescue me. But what had also happened was 3 other guys had gone unconscious as well.
No shit.
Yeah, so
Something with the rig.
it wasn't the rig; it was the actual air. So we were using these brand new rigs. We were the first ones to dive them, and we had literally pulled the air tanks, which are supposed to be 100% O2. We'd pulled them out of the plastic, sent them over to the divers to get jammed with 100% O2. Well, the problem is they don't come delivered with O2 in them. And so there was a small amount of ambient air still in there. And the divers who were responsible for jamming them, I guess they didn't know. There was some sort of drop in communication. I don't understand. I don't know who's at fault. I don't know. But long story short, the tanks got jammed with 100% O2, but there was a tiny little bit of ambient air in there. So you can go through your normal 2-minute check prior to diving, and you're like, yeah, I feel fine, I feel great, everything's good, right? Because you don't feel the effects of it yet. But then at depth, you get down to the depth that we dive at, and you start basically going hypoxic. You start suffocating, but you don't realize it. So that's why I was feeling all weird and claustrophobic, because I was
like a
suffocating.
shallow water blackout almost.
It's exactly what it was. I went hypoxic. So when I came to the surface, passed out. So I woke up paralyzed with all my gear off of me, SEAL doing CPR on me, and everybody's yelling and screaming. My tongue hurt, my mouth was bleeding, and
Wetsuit's full of shit.
Wetsuit. I didn't know it was full of shit. Yeah, I didn't know that yet. That's actually funny how I figured that out.
That's the bonus.
But so they throw me in a stretcher. I can't move. I'm slowly able to start. I'm starting to get a little bit of movement back in my toes and fingers and stuff. And they put me on a spine board, and they get me into an ambulance, and they're going to take me to a pressure chamber kind of thing. So they sent me over to I think it was UCSD hospital in San Diego. But on my way, this was the moment where I realized, I was like, okay, I need to get out of the teams. While I was in the ambulance, I didn't know what had happened yet. I thought I had an AGE, or arterial gas embolism, basically meaning that I thought I had bubbles in my blood, and that there was a 50-50 chance I was going to die. Because if one of those bubbles hits your brainstem or hits something vital, I mean, it can paralyze you, kill you, whatever. So I was laying there thinking there's a 50-50 chance I was going to die. And it was weird, man, because I saw, it was horrible. I saw my parents, and I saw my brother standing over my grave, basically. And they were crying, and that tore me up pretty bad. But that wasn't, I mean, I was sad for them, but the problem is I didn't care that there was a 50-50 chance I was going to die. I had no fight in me. There was no like, all right, I'm going to stick it through. I'm going to make it through this thing. There was none of that.
Just apathetic, huh?
I didn't care. I was just like, I'm going to die. And I was like, I'm ready to go. I don't care. So I spent 2 nights in the hospital. My O2 sats were in the 80s. which is really bad. And so then I had a bunch of time to kind of sit and think about stuff, and I basically had to redo my entire cardiovascular system. I would get out of breath just sitting up, let alone walking, let alone running, and all that jazz. But and when I sat and thought about it, I realized at that point that I was extremely depressed, and that I had been extremely depressed for the last year or two, and for a myriad of reasons. But I was like dealing with like some pretty severe depression, and that made me realize I need to find a bigger purpose. I need to find a bigger meaning for my life. And I want to have a reason when the next time it is that I may die, I want to know that I live my life with some purpose and meaning for something that matters to me. And not that serving my country doesn't matter, not that being a SEAL doesn't matter. That wasn't it at all. But I knew there was plenty of guys. My country's safe. Like, we're going to be fine. There's plenty of dudes that'll make sure we're good to go. And I kind of started looking into some other things, and I had the idea of doing the humanitarian stuff, but that's when I realized I was like,
something's got to change.
I gotta go do that.
It seems like, I think most people, myself included, I'm assuming people are thinking the same thing I'm thinking, I guess, and that seems like an odd train of thought given what you'd been through thus far. Do you have any thoughts or comments on why you think there was depression and a feeling of a lack of purpose, having spent several years as a team guy in multiple deployments? It seems like an odd train of thought.
Yeah, absolutely, it is. And looking back at it, it is odd. 99% of the guys that I knew absolutely loved it, but for me, I didn't enjoy it that much, to be perfectly honest. And a lot of that was because for me, I wanted to I joined the SEALs because I wanted to go downrange and crush bad guys, same as everybody else. But the 2-year cycle of all that stuff, it completely crushed my soul. And I had and looking into the future, I was like, dude, I'm not going to be able to go do my job. And going back to my childhood, we were talking about how how I was raised, how that probably has affected me for sure. But a lot of that has to that gave me, I guess, sort of an altruistic, or maybe what's the right word? A very idealistic,
pragmatic, maybe,
vision of the world of like, hey, I want to go do something. I want to help people.
Gotcha.
And there's plenty of dudes. There's plenty of dudes that are going to protect our country. I want to go actually work. I want to operate. And I think just that, mixed with probably a couple other things, maybe it just kind of really threw me off. And again, it was something I didn't realize. I wasn't sitting there and going like, oh, I hate my life. That wasn't it at all.
Yeah.
But then I kind of had that near-death experience and was like, oh wow, like I actually don't enjoy my life.
Yeah.
For a myriad of reasons. But it was just, I knew I needed to make a change.
Yeah. That's interesting for sure. I'm assuming somebody got their ass chewed for fucking the bottles up, or at least I hope.
Yeah, there was a bunch of people were pointing fingers, and it was a new program we were doing. It was a new system we were using. So things just kind of got dropped. I think there was just kind of a miscommunication somewhere. I don't even know if anybody got fired or anything. I don't know.
Probably got promoted knowing the Navy.
Probably.
Yeah. All right. So you decide to get out. You get out. Walk us through that process and kind of where the book comes in, the bulk of it, and the civilian aspect of going back. Because to me, even with the experience I have, like, I'm curious the process with which you go to those places as a civilian. That's some dicey shit. If you could kind of explain both how you got into that position, organization started, and then ultimately start going back overseas as a civilian humanitarian.
So as I had maybe 6 or 7 months left in the Navy, and I knew I wanted to start an organization to basically bring in former special ops guys to go into places and help people that need help. I mean, man, how many wars are there going on around the world that could definitely use the help of some SEALs and some SF dudes and some Rangers, right? I wanted to create an organization that could kind of do that. And I didn't know what that looked like, though. I don't know. Are we being paid to do this? Are we volunteering? I had no idea how that entire world worked. And so I volunteered. So I started my organization when I got out, but I kind of just started it on paper kind of thing. And I volunteered with another organization. And so the process from actually leaving the Navy was I took terminal leave. I took leave, so which means I had 2 months of leave saved up, but I still left the Navy at that point at the beginning of it, and I basically flew directly to Iraq. I stopped at several other places in between, but I don't want to go into that. Um, um, I basically flew directly to Iraq, into northern Iraq, into Erbil. So it's a normal civilian flight. Anybody can go there. You can just hop online right now and go to Qatar Airways and get yourself a ticket to Iraq if you want to. So I'd spoken with these guys before, and so I met up with them in Erbil, and yeah, they had somebody there to pick me up at the airport. Took me to basically like a safe house there, and we waited there for a couple of days. Got outfitted with just you went to the local bazaar and you bought some gear or whatever you might need, packed up a bunch of medical supplies. And at the time, so I was working with a group. So my organization is called Stronghold Rescue and Relief, but I was working with an organization called Free Burma Rangers at the time. And basically the mission was live with and work with the Iraqi army as they're clearing out ISIS strongholds, and provide support for them, provide medical support for them in combat, and then after combat, bring in relief supplies and medical stuff for the civilians who are just liberated, and the Iraqi army doesn't have the resources to try and take care of them. That was essentially the mission.
So, two questions. One, the several spots that you stopped that you don't want to talk about, is that from a security standpoint, or is there a specific reason you don't?
Yeah, kind of a security standpoint. Yeah, but that doesn't have to do with the process of getting out there. I was doing some other stuff.
I gotcha. Once you got there, obviously you're providing support. I can only assume, because you said it fairly nonchalantly, like, I talked to some guys and flew over there. Like, you obviously vetted this organization, made sure they're legit. It's not like some faux ISIS recruiting center.
Oh, right. Yeah.
How do you figure out that these guys are actually even legit and it's not a goddamn trap to begin with?
That's a great question. Yeah, because we also need to be very clear about it. You're right. I did say it very nonchalant. Going over there and doing this stuff is a huge deal. And if you do not have the background, and I'm talking, either years and years of experience or like an elite special operations background, don't go over there and do this stuff, because you will get yourself killed, and you're not going to have the effect that you want to have. I call it voluntourism, basically, where you have guys like, I want to go volunteer to fight ISIS. And it's like, well, dude, you have zero military background. You don't have a clue what you're doing. I appreciate the idealism, but you should probably join the military so you know what you're doing, so you're an asset to your team when you get over there, right? The group I volunteered with was Free Burma Rangers. I'll just refer to them as FBR from here on out. They were founded by a former special forces guy who grew up in Thailand, and he worked in Burma basically when he got out of the Green Berets. And so obviously I'm like, all right, cool, special ops background. I talked to him on the phone, because I sent him an email and said, hey, I want to start an organization doing this. And he's like, cool, man, yeah, come on out and volunteer with us. So I talked to him on the phone, and then flew out to Iraq, met him and the other guys. And I'm going to be perfectly honest. Yeah, it is kind of nonchalant. It's just kind of, you have to roll the dice and go for it. But it was, one of the places I stopped that I don't want to necessarily talk about is I stopped and met these guys somewhere else. Stopped and met these guys somewhere else, and then flew to Iraq like a week after that, after meeting them. So I met them in like a safe area. Saw that, okay, they're not crazy.
Yeah.
Or
they're at least not completely.
They're not completely crazy. Yeah.
They're crazy.
But the mission too. The mission wasn't, one thing that I liked about it was the mission was not like, let's go crush ISIS. That had nothing to do with it. Nothing. It was, hey, there's civilians that need help, and we're going to go help them. And I was like, perfect. This is exactly what I want my organization to do. Yeah. And that's exactly what I want to do. So, I ended up meeting up with these dudes.
So I am curious, from, looking at it pragmatically, realistically, of, you're over there, you can't fly over there with weapons, right? Did they have them there for you?
So yes, but they were not anything fancy. These were like AK-47s that ISIS fighters had been used, and then the ISIS fighter was killed, and the Iraqi army took the AK.
But you had something.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We had. There's no shortage of ammunition and weapons and stuff out there. Then we had everything: RPGs, machine guns, AKs, grenades, everything. You name it, we had it all.
And so when you were there with the FBR, were there any like crossed wires in terms of, did they know that you were looking to set up a similar organization? Was there any issue with that? Did you find, did you have any problems with their leadership organization? Did you find yourself thinking like, God damn, this is a fucking circus. What am I doing here? Were there anything like that happen?
Circus, yes. Issues, no.
Because I know, like in the nonprofit world, right? Not to interrupt, but it can get a little fucking catty that way with,
yeah,
where there's organizations with similar, mission statements, and it's at the end of the day, you ultimately kind of are competing for funding. There's only so much, and if you're a similar organization helping out somebody that's ultimately going to become somebody that is competing. I know that, as much as you don't like to think that that's the case, is that there is an element to that, to nonprofits, whether you want to believe it or not.
Yeah. So great question. So first of all, no, I was very upfront. The very first email I sent, I was like, hey, I'm interested in starting an organization. And I just kind of wanted to learn and see how they do things. So that's element number one. So no, there was never any issues with that. Number two is, if you're dealing with the right people, then there's no competition. If your mindset is, hey, there's tons of people that need help. Okay, great. If there's another organization, that's great. Like, yeah, please, like, we need more help. Like, there's no shortage of people needing help. And so as far as like, I mean, yes, like if you set up like let's say you set up a school or something like that, and then some other organization, like, oh, we have volunteer school teachers, and they come over there, and so they're like, oh, look at our facility here, and you're like, no, our donors paid for that. So yeah, you're absolutely right. There is an element there of that, but no. Also, so the third thing though is that so Stronghold is very, very different than FBR. It's not even remotely the same. In some ways, I mean, we operate in some of the same types of areas. Stronghold has a very different mission set. So our mission set is, we bring in a handful of special operations guys to train, so advise a company and assist, or advise, assist in a company, local people in the areas where they're working. We don't work in Iraq right now. The other guys have that covered. And you can spend millions and millions of dollars to help a handful of people. And yes, that's important to help those handful of people, but you could also spend that $1 million in some place like Burma or Venezuela or the Colombian-Venezuela border, and you can help
shitloads.
You can help hundreds of thousands of people. Exactly. Yeah. So, but our mission set is very different. I don't bring in lots of volunteers. I get messages literally every day on Instagram, Facebook, email, everything.
Bunch of soldier of fortune fucking badasses.
Well, I mean, I'm sure a lot of them, like, they want to do important stuff, because I was that guy too. I was the guy sending the email too at one point, so I get it. But with my organization, I don't bring in tons of volunteers. My rule is no more than 4 volunteers. Whereas like FBR, they'll have 10, 15 people, and totally random. They'll have like, like the leader of the organization, he like brings his kids out, and which is like, it's like, okay, do you? I'm not doing that with my organization. And then we also operate directly in extremely, we'll say, contested areas, and we will do missions that are a bit controversial, we'll say. Okay, and the reason I say controversial is, I mean, okay, so if you have a bunch of bad guys, and for sure, 100% for sure, that they are heading toward this village, and when they get to that village, that they're going to rape every single woman in the village. They're going to kill the kids. They're going to kill all the men. And if people don't run away. And then they're going to plant landmines in that village so that people can't come back. But inevitably, kids and people in the future will come back. So kids are going to get their legs blown off, right? Now, if you could do something to stop the bad guys from getting from point A to point B, would you? The answer is like, hell yeah. So part of what Stronghold does is we do stand in that gap, and our rescue teams evacuate the civilians, get them out of there, and then we'll take steps to stop the bad guys, if you catch my drift.
Yeah.
And I make no apology for that. But it's not soldier of fortune.
Yeah.
It's 1 or 2 special operations guys embedding with, training, and working with a group of civilian volunteers from the area that live there. We're not there to fight. We're not there to do that stuff. Yeah. If it happens, it happens. But that's not the intention.
So it's almost more like a civilian Green Beret mission.
It's exactly like a civilian Green Beret mission.
So 2 questions with that. How do you have the ability to vet and corroborate or justify the accuracy of the intelligence that it's, to me, it's very black and white. Like if group X is going to go to village B and do said horrible things. How are you ensuring that that intelligence is absolutely accurate and corroborated? And secondly, how are you deconflicting with host nation governments to be able to do shit like that? Do you run into any problems where I mean, it's not like you can call a fucking hotline, and I just need to talk to your local spec ops guys. Can you put me in touch with them? Like, how do you even fucking go about that?
Great questions. So I'll deal with the first one first. As far as the intelligence goes, we work in places where it's extremely black and white, where it's extremely there is no gray area. There's good guys and there's bad guys. And so because of that, we also have our own guys on the ground who see what's going on. We work and kind of vet the people as we're going through, because you can. I've been to places where I go in and I'm like, dude, the guys who were supposed to be helping here, they're just as corrupt as the other guys. So I'm like, no, I'm out.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of places where it's almost like a mafia mentality. Is that whoever's in charge, they get help from Americans. I mean, obviously, it happened a lot in Iraq, where sources, and I'm using air quotes for those listening, are saying that, hey, this group is fucking doing these horrible things, and you need to go hit them, and they're just their fucking competition.
Yeah. That's a great question. So, well, first of all, we never do anything offensive. That's not our job. We're not there to take back ground or fight. Like, no, the local armies and militias and whatever, they can have that stuff. The only thing we do is we step in when we know for sure that, again, group X is going to village B and they're going to get there and kill everybody, whatever. So that's the only time they step in. So we never do anything unless it's defensive. And even then too, it's always about saving the lives of the people. Once the people are saved, okay, cool, then we don't really care about territory or whatever. That's not our job. We're there to protect the people and help the civilians.
Is there a protocol or a process to be able to ensure that information is accurate, or is it just it's your guys on the ground that are, like, you have intelligence professionals that are saying, yes, this is accurate, or how do you?
It's the locals. It's the locals tell you exactly what's going on. And you're absolutely right. There are issues where it's like, okay, well, are they telling me that these guys are bad guys because they want us to take them out or something like that? Again, we don't do anything offensive. So
you essentially have to put yourself between them and the people you're trying to save and wait for them to attack.
Essentially.
Yeah. That's pretty dicey.
Well, it's super dicey. But again, too, so the places that we work right now are Colombia, Venezuela, and Burma. And the people that we help in those areas, it's a completely black and white, good guy versus bad guy situation. It's like, okay, if somebody's in the middle of Iraq and they're like, hey, ISIS is coming here to take us out. I mean, are you like, well, I need intel to corroborate whether or not ISIS, it's like, no, we know exactly what they're going to do. So that's what's going on. The other question you asked earlier was, how do you corroborate, or how do you work with host nations and stuff like that? And the answer is, we don't. So a lot of times the people that we're protecting the civilians from is the host nation. So, for example, in Burma, you have the Burmese government. The guys that we're stopping from killing civilians in Burma, it's the Burmese government. It's the actual Burma army. And they have sanctions against them. These are terrible, horrible people that do terrible, horrible things.
Are you guys working with like U.S. embassies in the area and stuff? Do they know that you're there, or are you pretty under the radar that way?
We're very under the radar, but I don't want to discuss exactly our relationships with other people on air. Because we are a humanitarian organization. So there's this perception, and even a lot of your questions are kind of like, almost looking at us like we're a military organization, but we're really not. Like, we're 99.999% of what we're doing. It's training the locals to stand on their own. It's bringing in food and medicine, but there's that 1% of time where things just go absolutely terrible, and we have now built this capability where they can defend themselves and take care of themselves, and we will stand with them in those times.
Yeah. No, I totally get that. I just, knowing, having been around the world a few times and knowing how a lot of governments are, I can only imagine that, that's putting yourself hanging out there like a set of fucking dog's balls in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. Because obviously say Burma as an example, is that guaranteed their government doesn't fucking want you there.
For sure.
So even something as simple as getting in there, I'm thinking of it from a logistics standpoint of like, how do you get into the country without them knowing? I mean, with airlines and facial recognition, and I mean, there's a whole element of shadowy logistics that I'm sure has to take place for you guys even to be able to get there and back. I'm assuming, right? Which
Yes.
most of which you don't want to
Yeah,
divulge, but
yeah, you and I can talk offline about it.
yeah, and then I'll
Yeah.
talk about it on the next one. No, it's super interesting shit. The if we could go back to because the book is so heavy on the battle in Mosul, and that was kind of your first taste of we'll call it a combat zone as a civilian. If you could kind of synopsize the experience there and walk us through that whole fucking circus.
Well, yeah, circus is a great word for it. So when I got to Iraq, like I said, I met up with these guys. We went to the safe house. Several days later, the rest of the team was there. We all met up, and then we hopped in a convoy of ambulances and drove out into the Iraqi countryside toward Mosul. Now, we had to go through Iraqi army checkpoints, and there's a bunch of weird militias that are out there with a bunch of crazy names, Iranian-backed militias and all kinds of people, and they're not coordinated with each other at all. So you have no idea which checkpoint you're rolling up to, if they're friendly, if they're if they're going to be hostile toward you. It's just this really bizarre. You absolutely are hanging it out there.
Yeah, I mean, you being a pale-skinned American, like that's not.
Oh yeah,
not
and with a bunch of other pale-skinned Americans. Yeah, you're just like, yeah,
that's fucking ballsy, man. I gotta admit, like that. My hat's off to you. That's a set of fucking huge nuts.
Or just pure ignorance.
Maybe a little bit.
A little bit of both. But yeah, so what we did was we embedded with an Iraqi army unit that FBR had made a relationship with before. So we get out there and we have these ambulances, and literally the entire first month that I was out there, all we did was food distributions, some super basic medical stuff, right, for areas that had already been liberated from ISIS. And 30 days in, we finally got into into an actual combat role, which wasn't. It's not a combat role; it's a medical role. So the Iraqi army was taking over this small village, which was held by ISIS guys, and I talk about this in the book. A little village called Garbala, outside of Mosul, several miles outside of Mosul, and the Iraqi army unit that we were with, they were an armored unit. And so it was honestly, it was one of the coolest things I've ever seen. They lined up. They had a T-72 tank, an M1 Abrams, a whole bunch of Russian BMPs, and then a bunch of American Humvees that were fully up armored. And they just lined everybody up across this field. We're in the plains of Nineveh, and it's just these beautiful green rolling hills because it was April, so the countryside is just flat and beautiful. It's absolutely breathtaking. But they line up all these tanks and they just start they just start dumping rounds into this village, and ISIS immediately opens fire from that village, but also another a larger town that they held kind of up on this hill. And so ISIS starts dropping mortars and stuff everywhere around us. The Iraqi army guys are just dumping rounds from these tanks into this village, and then it was charge. It was literally just full on World War II style. Get there. And so the tanks, they charge across this field, and they're moving. They're not sprinting, but they're going at like a medium pace, just enough to where
Adam Sandler.
Yeah, exactly. Just enough so just enough so ISIS can't adjust their mortars fast enough to kind of hit the tanks. And then ISIS started opening up with mounted machine guns, and so like armor piercing machine guns. So I was in a basically a thin skinned Range Rover. Ambulance. My job was there in case anybody got hit. And so I got out, and my job was to stay with this Iraqi army medic, and they don't have actual medics who've gone through a medic school. And so he was just kind of this guy who had learned on the job. So my job was just to stay with him. His name was Faiz. He didn't speak a lick of English. So I'm just following him around, and he's kind of going from vehicle to vehicle. I was initially staying in the back, kind of with the C2 command and control element where this general's at, and he's sitting there screaming into his radio, and all these tanks and stuff are just blowing stuff up. It's complete and utter madness. Well, this Iraqi medic, so there's maybe, I don't know, maybe a quarter mile between the C2 element and this front line of troops that's engaging and going into this town. Well, this Iraqi army medic, he gets it in his head. He gets the idea in his head. He's like, dude, let's go up to the front line. And keep in mind, there's mortars dropping all everywhere in between us, and I didn't want to go with him. And I was just like, but I had no way to tell him that I didn't want to go with him. And it was just one of those deals where it was like, all right, it's my first mission. I gotta you just gotta roll with it. Total circus. So he just starts running across the open, going back toward this front line of troops. And so I'm going with him. 20 seconds later, maybe 30 seconds later, the Humvee that I was standing right next to as cover blew up. And so I've been using this Humvee as cover as it was, driving up, and I've been right next to the front left wheel. That front left wheel hit an anti-tank mine, blew off the entire front of the Humvee, and would have completely killed me. No doubt, 100% would have been dead. So me and this medic, we're halfway between. We're in no man's land right now. Mortars and stuff are going everywhere. And then he's like, we hear the explosions. So he turns around and he's like, oh, he makes the signal like this, meaning, it gives him his hand signal saying that there must have hit a mine or something. And so he turns around and starts running back to help out the guys in the Humvee. And I was like, I like this guy. He was like, he was putting it out there. He was like, a true warrior kind of thing, man. He was really laying it down for his guys. And so we stayed in the tracks that a tank had left, and we ran back to this Humvee. Everybody was fine, which was the craziest thing. Everybody was totally fine. Yeah. So we get back to the Humvee, and this is where things get crazy too. We get back to the Humvee, and the front line element that we had just been running toward, an ISIS suicide vehicle came out and tried to blow up one of the tanks. And these ISIS suicide vehicles, man, they put off these huge explosions. It's like a 2,000-pound bomb. These things are just massive mushroom clouds. And so had we continued on running, we would have been right in the debris field of this thing going off. So it was just like two more times. Okay, we just escaped death. And so then we turn back around. This Fies guy, he turns back around and runs back across no man's land to go see if anybody's hurt up at the front. And so now I've run across this minefield 3 times. 2 things have exploded. And I'm just like, what the hell is going on?
It sounds like a stage of fucking Super Mario Brothers.
Oh, dude, it was so bizarre. But yeah, then we get up there, and then the Iraqi army, they've now surrounded this little village, and all these like infantry guys start piling out of the BMPs, and they start kind of surrounding the town, and then all the tanks back away. And so myself, the founder of FBR, and the interpreter, we're just standing there. And we're basically, hey, congratulations, you're in the Iraqi infantry now. And it was just like, all right, cool, start clearing houses. And dude, coming from the SEAL teams where everything's very surgical, very precise, lots of tactics, like, you're thinking about, you don't parallel guys in hallways, there's all kinds of rules and stuff. Dude, complete and utter anarchy. I mean, these Iraqi soldiers just descend on all these houses at the same time. They're not even clearing doors. They're just shooting through doors, and like their buddies are on the other side of the building kind of thing. And so there's all this shooting going on, and they're just kicking in doors and whatever else, and like not looking for mines or anything, but they still magically found like 3 or 4 IEDs in these little buildings. Just didn't set any of them off. It just absolutely blows my mind. So we're walking down, and I'm just kind of staying at the back of the stack. Me and the other guy from FBR, we're staying in the back, just like, dude, we're not we're not getting involved in this. But then, so we're walking across the open, and all of a sudden, the guy in front of me, Dave, he's the founder of FBR. He starts, and I actually got this on video. He's walking across this open area, and he just freaks out and just starts shooting a bunch from his AK into this little building. And I'm like, okay, here we go. And he starts screaming BKC, meaning that's like a Russian machine gun. So there's this Russian machine gun in this doorway. And so he goes over there. I give him cover. He throws a grenade in there, and then we rush the room. And sure enough, there's a Russian BKC on the ground in there. And there's a tunnel going down underground, and you can see. So and again, I got all this on video. And so we clear this little building, and you can see where all the ISIS guys had been sleeping. You can see their socks. Just everything's there. And then there's this tunnel going underground. Well,
did it stink like fuck down there?
No, it didn't actually.
Really?
No, it didn't stink at all.
Smell like Febreze.
Smell like Febreze. Yeah, very, very, very hygienic people, ISIS. But then, yeah, we knew basically what had happened was there was an ISIS guy who had seen us, attempted to fire his BKC, but the first round jammed. And because of that, that's the only reason we're still alive. So this is all in one day. This is like you're just cheating death 15 times that day. So the weapon jammed, and then him and at least one other guy ran down into the tunnel. Well, the leader of FBR, he went down in the tunnel to try and smoke these dudes out, and so I went with him. And so we're using grenades in this live tunnel with ISIS dudes in there trying to clear them out. It's choking out all the oxygen. It was horribly stupid. We didn't have any nods or anything. Like we're just, no night vision. And, but yeah, we're clearing through these ISIS tunnels. We can't find them. We can't find these ISIS dudes. But there's one shaft that's like 30 feet underground, and there's another room up there. I don't know how to describe it. There's like another entranceway that we can't get to, and we're like, oh, there's definitely ISIS dudes up there, and they probably pulled up a ladder. So we get out of there, and as we're leaving, somebody else points at the ground. They're like, hey, watch your step. There's a landmine in the tunnel right where we had walked like 3 or 4 times going back and forth. Magically, somehow we missed it. Didn't step on the landmine. There's a Russian landmine sticking there.
And so you were on like a GoPro during this time?
I had a contour. Yeah. So that was on. And I think at this point I turned it off because we were just down in the black darkness. But then so we get out of the tunnel, and then the Iraqi army, they had like a bulldozer with this mechanized unit. And so they just filled in the tunnel. They just collapsed the tunnel on top of these ISIS dudes. And and then that night, the Iraqi army heard 2 explosions from underground, and it was basically 2 ISIS guys in that shaft had realized they were buried alive and had used grenades to kill themselves. So that was my first experience, and it was like, oh, okay, cool. No air support, no backup, no 18 Delta, SOCOM medics.
No solid guys with you.
No SEALs. I mean, don't get me wrong. The other guys were the other volunteers I was with. So Dave, he's former Green Beret, so he's real solid, real good dude. Another guy was out there, was former Green Beret as well, driving the ambulance. And then a couple guys from Burma and some other places who were just like volunteer medics as well. But yeah, man, it was just nuts. It was just total circus, total clown show. But dude, to be honest though, I was like, all right, man, this is what I got to do to help people and to get after it, like Jocko says.
Yeah.
To get after it there. Then that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was kind of cool.
So for the mentality's sake, how did you kind of justify doing that versus just staying in and being in the military, in terms of that scratching the itch that you needed to change?
Why did I get out instead of staying in the military?
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you find yourself doing that, I mean, I think most people would say, okay, well, kind of what's the difference? If you're essentially, doing basically the same thing, just in a much more disorganized fashion, like, why didn't you just stay in and continue to do what you were doing? Or was being there and seeing that, did that shape you starting your own organization and being very different about it? Or talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So yes. So I joined the military to go do that. Right. But like I said, I just spent 2 years doing an entire workup and deployment to a place where I wasn't going to get to ever go into combat or do anything. And then looking into the future, I saw that was just what the case was going to continue to be. And even with the war on ISIS, there were SEAL platoons and SF guys that got to embed with the Iraqi army and the Syrians and all that stuff. But as a support, and yes, they got into some combat here and there, but there's no freedom of maneuver. And again, I told that big long kind of action war story, but right before that, I remember I said, hey, we spent a month doing nothing but handing out food and medicine and stuff like that. That's why I was really there. I was really there to do the food and medicine, help out the people, and have freedom of maneuver, because I was like, hey, if there's a war going on, I want to go there and help the people. And again, it's so easy to kind of focus on the cool war stories, but it's just like, that's not why I was there. And that wasn't, that was 1% of the time kind of thing. Had I been able to go do missions like that all the time in the teams, I'd still be in. I'd be like, yeah, let's go do that. Let's go do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and even, I mean, I'm assuming, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but even screening and going to dev group, that while they're busy as fuck, there's still a lot of, stipulations and ROEs and whatever. Is that what kind of kept you from going there? Or?
To an extent, a lot of it, yeah. So one of the other things that I realized too when I was on that South Pacific deployment was, we spent 6 weeks in Thailand working with the Thai SEALs, and we spent 6 weeks there. And I knew about the war going on in Burma, which borders Thailand. I think like China, India, several other places border Burma. But I just remember thinking, dude, I was like, if a 45-minute helo ride, you could have this full platoon of, barrel-chested freedom fighters into the middle of Burma to go crush bad guys. And I just remember thinking, I just remember thinking like, I didn't like the fact that somebody was telling me who I could and couldn't help. I didn't like that. I was like, no, I'm here. I'm ready to go. Like, let's go kill bad guys. Why are we sitting here doing a J set or a training exercise?
Yeah.
And so that was something that really, that kind of bugged me. So yeah, I mean, I could have stayed in. I could have screened, and maybe I would have made it through. Maybe not. I don't know. But at the end of the day, it was like I have somebody else telling me where I have to go. And then also too, man, my first experience in Afghanistan was okay. So we're fighting this war, but you're also leaving in 3 months, and we're also retrograding, and also the base that you're fighting to defend, we're going to burn it. Oh, and then also the big base that you guys are ultimately fighting to defend, yeah, we're going to bulldoze the whole thing. And all of your Afghan allies, they're stealing from you. One of the Afghan allies almost did a green on blue on one of our, for civilians, that means that the Afghan ally almost shot one of our SEALs in the back because he was angry about something. And so it was just like, dude, these areas are complex and they're important to work in. Don't get me wrong, but it was just, I was like, I've got one life to live. And if there's, women and children getting raped and murdered in the middle of the jungle, and I can do something to stop that, well, I'm going to go do that instead of, waiting for orders from someone else.
Getting the most bang for your buck.
Yeah. And freedom of maneuver. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I dig it.
But also zero support. That's the thing too. Yeah. There's no backup. Nobody's coming to get you. Whenever I work in Burma, if you get hurt, so this is a conversation I've literally had with the guys. They were like, look, we appreciate you here helping us. And they're all about it. And these are like some of my best friends now, but they're like, if you get wounded, you need to understand we can't carry you out. It's going to be 3, 4, 5 days to get you to some place with even like basic medical care, let alone getting you to anywhere where you can be. So they just said, like, you need to understand we can't get you out. And you know what that means? And I was like, yeah. Basically, they were saying, if you're wounded bad enough, we're just going to have to kill you.
Yeah.
And like and I was like, all right, cool.
I think they make a Hallmark card for that, right?
Yeah.
Or they should, goddammit.
Yeah. Welcome to the team.
Yeah.
We're going to kill you.
Have you encountered any resistance from the U.S. government? We'll call it strongly discouraging you from doing it. Have you heard from them? Have you tried to clear anything?
No. So again, our missions are very humanitarian. I know those stories aren't as exciting to tell. So it might, the listener might have the impression that like we're constantly out there shooting guns and blowing stuff up. That's not true. That's not true at all. 99% of the time we're training, we're building relationships, we're doing all the non-sexy things.
Yeah.
And then there's that 1% of times where things go bad and we defend ourselves. We are not actively looking for combat. We're not actively doing any of that stuff. So there's really, I haven't heard any issues.
Yeah.
I'm speaking in Washington, D.C. here in a few weeks about what I'm doing. And it's not,
I guess, again, just having founded a nonprofit and, been a part of it and a number of others for over a decade, it's, when it comes to, getting a 501c3 status and, what disqualifies you from that or can get it taken away or whatever, they're pretty fucking particular about that. And I was curious if you had gotten any pushback from the U.S. government in terms of what your mission set is as it relates to that. But
gotcha. Well, yeah, that's the mission set is we help. Here's what it is. We help civilians in war zones, and we defend ourselves if attacked.
Yeah.
That's literally all it is.
Yeah.
We're not buying guns. So I'll just be very clear to our listeners and to anybody. We've never bought a single gun. We've never bought a single bullet. We never will. That's not what we do. We go in, and if people have stuff, and we'll show them, we'll say like, hey, like we'll just borrow the stuff that you guys have. We're not purchasing any of that. Our entire mission is food, medicine, training. Hey, here's how you can, so we'll embed with like a local leader and say, hey, hey, I've seen your militia guys who are just, of course, just an unkempt rabble of, volunteer civilians who just don't want their homes to be burned. And you're like, hey, well, what if you could position your guys this way? And hey, let's set up a way to get the civilians out of here when bad stuff happens. And then you can also get your troops out, kind of thing. Yeah. So it's not, it's not super militant. It's really not.
If we could go back to the Mosul thing. So after that long operation, how long were you in country volunteering for FBR?
I was there for about 90 days until I got hit.
Okay.
90 days total.
So can you kind of walk us through from post mission of that mission through the kind of the Battle of Mosul until you ultimately got hit and evacuated out?
Yeah. So after that one crazy incident in Garbala, we went back to again just doing food and food and medicine distributions and things like that. But on the horizon was always Mosul. If you looked off to the north, there was Mosul burning on the horizon. So there's always smoke coming from it, and there's at night you would see the tracers fire and all that stuff. You'd see the explosions from the American, from the Americans dropping bombs and things like that. But we had no intention or even knowledge that we'd be going into Mosul. Our entire mindset was that we were with this armored unit, which is better suited for open plains and for kind of clearing these villages that are out in the plains of Nineveh. As you know, man, if you bring in a tank into like a urban, closely dense packed battlefield, you need a ton of infantry to support it, and it's not your primary weapon, right? Because it's very easy to corner a tank and blow it up in an urban environment. So in our minds, we're like, oh, we're not going into Mosul. It was just kind of this thing over there. Well, we one day the Iraqi army decided, nope, this unit that we were embedded with, they're like, nope, you guys are going to go help support Mosul. And so the morning of May 4th, all these tanks were lined up, and there were a bunch of other Iraqi army units as well, other tank brigades. So the entire Iraqi Ninth Armored Division was there. So it's just dozens of tanks, and we're talking just a hodgepodge of M1 Abrams, T-72 Russian tanks, like American Humvees, BMPs everywhere. And the morning of May 4th, so the way the Iraqis fought was they would usually fight for 3 hours. They'd get up, have their tea, the sun's up, everybody's ready to go, cool. Everybody load up your tanks at 9 a.m. We'll go fight ISIS for 2.5 hours, 3 hours till noon, and then we're good. And then we're gonna stop for tea, maybe smoke some hookah, and we'll get them tomorrow. That was just the way they fought. So you'd fight in these little 3 hour increments. It was the most bizarre thing. So that morning we got up and I was like, all right, cool, we're gonna do another 3 hour push. I was extremely wrong. That day was the invasion of West Mosul. And the Mosul is basically split in half by the Tigris River, and the east side of the river had already been cleared from ISIS. So all the ISIS fighters were out of there. They were either dead or they'd run to West Mosul. And then if you look at the slice of West Mosul, the Iraqi army infantry divisions and their special operations guys had hit it from the south and were kind of eating their way north. But as you're going through the city, you now have more and more and more ISIS fighters in a smaller area. So every room, every alley, every window, every inch of ground is covered by a landmine or a sniper or a machine gunner. And all these ISIS guys, they're not going to surrender. This is a fight to the death. Even if they do surrender, they know they're going to die. So they're not going to surrender.
And so at this time, also, just for my clarification, I guess the Iraqi army was primarily tasked, and I remember hearing about this in the news, but there were also U.S. military special operations doing kind of a similar AAA mission, the assist type of operations that were there at that same time. Was there any level of coordination between FBR and the U.S. military? Any communication whatsoever? Did they know that you guys were there?
Yes. Yeah. So and same with Stronghold, if we're ever in an AO where there's any kind of U.S. military personnel at all, you will coordinate that stuff extensively. Yeah, so there was a direct line of communication between the founder of FBR and the actual general who's in charge of the entire offensive in Mosul.
Yeah.
And but no, we were not in direct communication with the special operations guys that were embedded with the Iraqi army in West Mosul. But so basically what ended up happening was the mission was, because this densely packed area, they call it the old city of Mosul, like the original, thousands of years old kind of place, was so densely packed with ISIS fighters that the Iraqi forces couldn't move any further. Couldn't move any farther forward. And so they brought in the only thing that they had left, all these tanks, and they needed basically to do another frontal assault, get into the city, and crush ISIS from the west. So May 4th, we woke up and the Iraqis started kind of pushing toward the city. There's your typical gunfire. There's some artillery going off, but nothing completely out of the ordinary. But then I realized things were about to kick off when They lined up all their tanks again in this huge on a long line across this open field, which was maybe a kilometer to the edge of Mosul itself. And it was like that Garbala assault, but times five. It was just dozens and dozens of tanks and BMPs and Humvees just lined up, all firing in unison, or all firing into Mosul, and ISIS guys firing back. I mean, everything was just, there was explosions going off everywhere, tons of incoming machine gun and mortar fire, and then the Iraqi army pushed across this open field and got into the actual city itself. And as soon as the Iraqi army made it into the city, immediately car bombs started going off because ISIS was sitting there. They were ready. So these car bombs are going off every 5 minutes. And yeah, it was just complete and utter anarchy. And so there's tons of wounded. And so we start treating the wounded, but then also civilians start escaping. So the civilians who lived in Mosul, a lot of these people, they were there 4 years prior when ISIS showed up. And so all they've known for the last 3 years is ISIS rule. And finally, the Iraqi army is here to clear out Mosul. Now, what's also significant about West Mosul was the mosque where al-Baghdadi made his famous speech proclaiming the existence of the caliphate, the new Islamic empire. He made that in West Mosul, in the old city. He made that speech at this grand mosque which has like a leaning minaret. And so it was a very significant, like this was like the heart of where ISIS started. And it was a complete and utter massacre. So ISIS started shooting civilians who were trying to run away and get to the Iraqi army. And they didn't care. They were killing women, kids, men, everybody. And so what I thought was going to be a 3-hour mission getting into the city ended up being 3 straight days, all day, all night, wounded, civilians, soldiers, tons and tons of casualties, tanks getting blown up. And it was complete and utter insanity.
So during that 3 days, what exactly were you doing? Was it primarily first aid type of stuff?
Yeah. So I was not a medic during my time in the teams, but yeah, man, it was just full on TCCC, tactical combat casualty care is exactly what we were doing.
And were there any instances where it was getting so bad where you were getting involved in the mix, or was it?
Every day we were getting mixed up in the fighting because we didn't have that big of a foothold into the city. So that's why there was kind of round the clock fighting for the first several days, was because the Iraqi army had to push deep enough into the city to actually establish a legit foothold.
Yeah.
And so several instances that happened there. On one of them specifically, a group of predominantly, it was like 99% women and children. This group was running toward us, and they're running. They're trying to get to freedom, but then all of a sudden we hear these ISIS bullets start snapping around, and they're trying to shoot the civilians. And I could tell the direction that the bullets were coming from, but I mean, there's 1,000 windows. You don't really know where everything's coming from. But I mean, there's this crowd of civilians running straight at me. Well, I was in a ditch, and we were out there just in case anybody got shot. And so immediately, myself and my buddy Sky, we started returning fire toward ISIS. But luckily, because I'd had so much weapons training in the teams, I was actually firing through the crowd at these ISIS guys. So I was literally firing a foot, 2 feet past running people's faces, just dumping inaccurate rounds toward ISIS to try and suppress them. And then they shifted. I don't even know exactly where it's coming from, but they ended up shifting their fire, which is what I wanted them to do. They started shifting their fire toward me instead of the civilians. And I was watching their bullets would start hitting, kicking up dust like right in front of my face. And as soon as it got close, I dropped down, roll over, reload, pop up in another spot, keep firing. The bullets would start, kicking me in the dirt, kick me in the face with dirt, and then I'd roll or not roll, but like drop down, pop up in another spot. So just your basic
American whack-a-mole.
It was that's exactly what it was. It was American whack-a-mole. But I'm firing through this crowd of civilians, and it was. I mean, it was. I was just grateful for the training that I'd had because I felt comfortable in that situation because it was what needed to be done. But anyway, so all the civilians make it through there. But yeah, man, and we were getting mortared. We were. Tons of covering fire, tons of stuff like that. But you can't see ISIS. You can't see the ISIS fighters. You don't know exactly where they're at.
About how many FBR individuals of you were there at that time?
I would say maybe 8 or 9 of us
Yeah.
total. Yeah, maybe something like that.
So this last 3 days until at what point did the siege kind of subside and things start to level out? Like how did that shake out?
So the first 3 days we finally established a foothold, and then the Iraqi army kind of took a break, and they were like, "All right, stop, resupply, refuel, reset up our positions," and then they were started coordinating with the other Iraqi army units to figure out, okay, who's taking which city, or sorry, who's taking which sectors of the city, who's taking which neighborhoods, different things like that. So they started. They took a couple of days of planning for that, and then it was just from that point on for the next 30 days. It was just, dude, street to street, move up the next block, move up the next block, move up the next block, and it was just this grind to weed ISIS out. Just tons of casualties, lots of civilians getting hit.
And during this time, you were basically filling that same role throughout that 30 days?
Yeah. So it was just, you're just a combat medic.
Yeah.
And
with an occasional mix up of
with the occasional mix up of shooting and stuff like that. Yeah.
Were there instances where you know for sure that you were killing ISIS fighters, or was it really indiscriminate?
It was pretty indiscriminate. Yeah. There were several cases where I saw muzzle flashes, or even one case where I actually saw an ISIS fighter. He was actually aiming an RPG at me, but didn't realize it until he turned and fired it at somebody else, and then I fired back at him. But I was using an Iraqi army soldier's scope, which wasn't at all zeroed in. So I missed the ISIS fighter by, like, I don't know, 3 feet to his left or something, and it hit the ground. I was like, ah, crap, my one chance.
Yeah.
But then you would go. It was very hard to see him. But then as we cleared through, though, you'd see all the bodies. So there's lots of dead civilians and lots of dead animals. But then you'd see ISIS fighters everywhere. Yeah.
In terms of the civilians and dead animals, what kind of percentage would you say there were of, if you're looking at all of the fatalities, what percentage do you think were civilians versus actual ISIS fighters?
Wow, that's a great question. I never thought about it that way. Just in my experience, what I personally saw, I'm not talking about big statistics. I don't know the official numbers. What I saw, I'd say you probably saw 5 to 6 dead civilians for every one dead ISIS fighter you'd find.
Holy fuck!
It was bad. It was really bad. But ISIS was also keeping the civilians there for that specific reason. A lot of people wanted to run away, but ISIS wouldn't let them leave because they know that that we don't do indiscriminate shooting. Yeah. So it was, but then you'd walk by a house, and you'd smell the smell of dead bodies. And I remember, so one specific house we walked by, I was on patrol with the Iraqi army, and we walked by this house that had been completely flattened. And there were just body chunks of, just chunks of flesh and body parts and stuff everywhere. Really gruesome. And they'd started to rot. And it was clearly just the way the blast pattern worked. It clearly had come from the house, and then the house had collapsed on multiple people clearly in there. And as we were walking through, though, we were kind of looking at the rubble, and there was a photo album. And we looked through this photo album, and it was the photo of the family that lived there. And I don't know for sure if that was the family that was killed, but there's a very high chance that it was. And yeah, man, it was a brutal place. So also, that's why my book is called City of Death. The battle for Mosul was the deadliest urban battle the world has seen since World War II. A lot of people don't realize that. It was an absolute killing field. It was an absolute disaster. Not only because it was difficult for coalition forces, the Iraqi army, the U.S. military, to kill ISIS without killing civilians because they were so densely packed in together, but also, again, if civilians tried to flee, ISIS would kill them. And so the level of killing was something I never thought I'd see in my lifetime.
Do you think that, and I think your perspective is about as at least legitimate as anybody's, given that you were on active duty for the last couple of years of Obama's presidency during the whatever that agreement was with Iraq of the troop withdrawal. Obviously we held Mosul for a number of years prior to pulling out and then ISIS moving in and taking it all over. It's hard not to say it's because of that. Is that kind of the general feeling of the Iraqi people, of FBR, of the people that were there at that time, civilians, et cetera, is that we caused that by pulling our troops out the way that we did?
The general sentiment. So yeah, yes, we pulled out a little bit prematurely. In my opinion, I think it was the right call to ultimately withdraw the troops, but it was just too soon. I think we should have waited at least another 3 or 4 years and really built up the capability of the Iraqis to kind of stand on their own. So I think it was the right decision. Way too soon, right? They weren't ready. But the flip side of that, though, is the Iraqi army at the time, specifically the guys that held Mosul. They held Mosul from 2011 all the way to 2014 or 2013, something like that. So they held it for 2 or 3 years. But Mosul fell in a matter of days.
And, yeah, I mean, not to interrupt, but I think just like with a lot of things, just like, the reason why a lot of other countries haven't attacked this country on its mainland, largely speaking, is because the understanding of what would happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a good example of that, is that the reason why it held during those periods is because they knew our troops were right there and would fucking hammer.
Oh, for sure.
So,
yeah.
So I guess, boiling it down to a single fucking yes or no question, I mean, do you think that ultimately that's, and I'm not trying to lead you on here, I'm just, to me, a travesty of that magnitude, like somebody ought to be fucking held accountable, at least to a certain extent. I do think ultimately, the people who are committing the atrocities are ultimately at fault. But if you're enabling that by doing something that we could have prevented, like that's a pretty big kick in the fucking nuts, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So what's the yes or no question?
Well, just, do you think that we're ultimately responsible for Mosul falling because of Obama's policy of pulling the troops out? This is a dramatic pause.
No, it is. Well, no, I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think of it. To be perfectly honest, I don't think it's as simple as a yes or no question. Yes, because we pulled out the troops. Yes, because we pulled out the troops, Mosul fell for sure. Yes, but with that being said, I also that's the next point I was getting to, though, was again, I think it was a bad policy decision. It was bad timing for that policy decision. Yes, but what you need to understand as well is the Iraqi army had tons of weapons and personnel and ammunition and fuel to defend Mosul and to take control. The problem was, as soon as we left, what happened was so the way that the funding works with the Iraqi army is the general gets all the money, and it's his job to then disperse it to his troops.
And he didn't.
And they don't disperse it to their troops, or they keep guys on the payroll that have already gotten out. So, some Iraqi soldier gets out of the military. Well, they don't report it, so they keep on getting the paycheck, right? But then the other thing too is they started selling off fuel. They started selling off ammunition. They started selling off all the parts and equipment and stuff. So they have 50 M1 Abrams, but they can't do anything with them because they just sold all the stuff off. So it's a mix between, it's a bad policy decision at the wrong time, but it's like you also have all the resources. The Iraqi army had all the resources that they needed, but several people at the top, because of corruption, gutted their own military, and it fell really fast. Yeah.
And to me, that it ought to be a lesson learned for the United States, and to not do it that way. Like, if you're going to supply a fucking military and it's a corrupt way of life, like, why would you just give it to the generals?
Exactly. I completely agree with that. It's the whole thing is completely asinine. Yeah.
And back to the civilian atrocities, because I think it's so alarming. You talked a little bit about animals. Was there a particular animal? Was it like mostly goats, cows, dogs? Was it just fucking everything, or
all that stuff? There weren't like lots of goats and cows and stuff inside the city, but yeah, lots of dogs and cats and things like that. And actually, one of the things we were hearing from civilians who made it out of ISIS held territories was that basically ISIS was eating all the food, and so the families were basically eating cats. And the reason that's significant is because there are so many dead bodies that the animals are eating the dead humans. And so you have cats and dogs running around eating dead human flesh, and then you have the humans then eating the animals, which just ate a dead human, that morning.
Sounds like a good idea for a new Disney theme park. Jesus Christ, what a fucking nightmare, man.
City of Death, the ride. Yeah.
Jeez. So if you could, now if you can share kind of the point at which things took a turn for the worst for you, and explain that scenario.
So what happened was June 1st, 2017 was the deadliest day of the Battle of Mosul. And that's because there was a group of civilians, a large several hundred civilians, who made a break for it. And they tried to run away from ISIS. ISIS then massacred at least 165 of them, 160, 165. That doesn't include all the people that were wounded, made it to us, and then died later. So the number's much more than that. I'm going to go with at least 225 minimum. They slaughtered at least 225 people, wounded probably 100 more. So June 1st, we didn't realize that this massacre had happened. We were just treating the wounded as usual, but then there was definitely an uptick of drama, and a lot more bodies were coming in, a lot of fresh wounds, kids, things like that.
Did you say that they massacred them for trying to leave?
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Um, and so we were treating all these civilians. We didn't realize that a massive massacre had happened because obviously there's a breakdown in communication there with language barriers and whatnot. But what happened was um, basically the Iraqi army asked us, they said, hey, can you guys stay out here all night with us? Because we normally move back a little bit and go to like a safe house type, not a safe, it's not that it's actually safe, but we go like maybe, a mile behind the lines at some abandoned house. That's where you kind of sleep and whatever else. But they said, hey, can you guys stay up here with us tonight? Because so many civilians are coming through. So the night of June 1st into the morning of June 2nd, 2017, we were up all night treating civilians. So we're, laying in this bombed out building next to a bunch of there's a bunch of Iraqi soldiers going in and out. Flies are just everywhere, and mosquitoes are eating you alive. And you try and pass out for an hour if you can, in the dark. But then an Iraqi soldier would come up to me every hour or so, wake me up, and I'd wake up the rest of the team, and we'd go out. And you're wearing red tactical lenses because ISIS is 150 yards away, but kind of around the corner. And dude, out of the darkness would just come horribly wounded, mangled people, looking for help. And so you're sitting there with your tactical red light, trying to treat these people the best you can, just stabilize them, and then you have an ambulance there that evacuates them and gets them to a proper level of care. And we're doing that all night. So you passed out for 45 minutes. You're dreaming about whatever, and all of a sudden you get woken up and you're going back out into the darkness, and these horrible images are just coming at you.
It's like fucking Walking Dead.
Dude, it was bad, man. A lot, and we were concerned about suicide vests and things like that because several civilians had blown themselves up, or hidden ISIS fighters had blown themselves up, and so that was all night. Well, the sun rose the next morning, and we went down to the end of the street, kind of where ISIS was at, and we kind of looked around the corner a little bit, a little tactical peek, and just dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of bodies everywhere. Women, kids, old people. There was a man in a wheelchair slumped over. There was little girls. I saw a pregnant woman. There was a baby, maybe, I don't know, 3 months old, if that, with its head bashed in, laying between its parents. I think what had happened was the parents had been shot in the back. I think the father was holding the baby and had fallen onto a pile of rubble, and that's what had killed the baby, and bashed its head in. So the most gruesome, horrible, terrible stuff you can imagine. And but as we looked out over the city, over this highway, um, we saw a pile of bodies, a particularly large pile of bodies, and probably 20 or 30 people all packed in there. But then we started seeing movement. We started seeing several kids alive in this pile of bodies, and several adults. And we were screaming at them saying, hey, run to us, run to us. But they were, at this point, had completely gone into shock because they'd spent the entire day prior and the entire night hiding in this pile of bodies, and they weren't there mentally anymore. And one girl in particular was hiding herself under her mother's hijab. We assume it is her mother. Um, and then there were, several kids. As we watched the kids, when we saw this happen, when we saw this scene, this pile of bodies was maybe 50 meters away from a 4 or 5 story building that we knew was occupied by at least 100 ISIS fighters, and with tons of civilians in there. It was what used to be a hospital. So ISIS, real nice guys, they took over this hospital and were holding everybody hostage in there, and had murdered these group of people from 50 yards away. And So we knew immediately that we had to do something. When you're in one of those situations, so the motto of my organization is the only thing necessary for the tribe of evil is for good men to do nothing, by Edmund Burke. And man, I truly believe that. And you have this horribly evil situation, and so we all knew, like, hey man, we're the good guys, we have to do something. And we found out, or we saw this early in the morning, but it took us until early afternoon to get the Iraqis to finally move and get moving. We also called the American military and said, hey, you guys need to put a drone overhead. Something really bad just happened here. So they actually repositioned a drone over us. And then the American military actually agreed to give us a smoke screen. We said, hey, we want to go out and get their civilians out here. We want to can we get a smoke screen or something? And they were like, yeah, we'll give you a smoke screen from from an artillery unit that was out there. And the tragedy was, by the early afternoon when all this finally got coordinated, um, 3 of the 4 kids that I saw had died from heat exhaustion. So it's Mosul, it's June, it's you're basically in a convection oven. If you're out there in the middle of the street, you're gonna die, especially if you're wounded or whatever. But there was also 2 men who were still alive. So at this point, when we launched the mission, 2 men, 1 little girl. The plan was for the Iraqi army to drive a tank down the road, and we were going to hop in a Humvee behind the tank, go with them, hop out, grab the kids. Meanwhile, the Americans are giving us an artillery smoke screen. We throw the kids and these wounded guys into the Humvee. Then we all turn around and just back out of there because we're going straight into ISIS territory. Like, we do not control this area. Mm-hmm. Right before the mission, I'm talking like 10 seconds before we started, the Iraqis in the Humvee, they were like, no, we're not going. F that. And they weren't going to do it. But the tank was still willing to go, which is great. So this Iraqi army tank drives out into the middle of the street, this large sort of 6 or 7 lane highway. And then immediately the Americans start dropping this smoke screen for us. And we have a limited amount of time. So there's these airburst explosions in the air that are sending down these balls of fire that are just sending off tons of smoke, obscuring ISIS kind of, but they can still kind of see through it. And, it's not 100% effective. So we get out there behind this tank, and immediately as soon as we get behind this tank, ISIS opens fire from the hospital, and they also open up fire from the flank, but they can't see us clearly. So there's just bullets going everywhere. And I mean, like everywhere. They're just slamming into the ground around us. They're bouncing off the tank. They're just hitting everything. And then they started shooting, ISIS started shooting mortars at us as well. And so there's mortars going off, and we're waiting. We got out behind this tank and we're waiting for it to kind of get lined up. It was, I don't know what they were doing. They were, going forward and then back and twisting and turning, and they were trying to get lined up to make this sprint down the road. And earlier when I talked about, kind of when I was in that ditch and kind of had this I'm going to die moment, that was when I had it. I was sitting there looking at one of the bodies of the guys. Well, the tank then, without warning, because we had no communication with the tank, we have zero communication with it. So it's Iraqi army soldiers driving an American-made tank.
What could go wrong?
What could go wrong with a bunch of civilians running behind it, man? Talk about a circus. But so they take off and go straight into ISIS territory, right at ISIS, and we just sprint after them. And it was a short sprint, maybe 100 yards. But I'm trying not to throw up because I'm like beyond terrified. My hands are shaking from the adrenaline. Bullets are coming in. I'm not saying at all it was like D-Day, of course not. But the opening scene of Saving Private Ryan with the machine gun nests and all the smoke and stuff, imagine that, but it's just a 6-lane highway instead of a long beachhead. That's basically what it was like. Yeah. And we get up there and we get online with where the little girl's at. And then I was going to run out and grab the little girl. The team leader said, hey, wait, we need more. It's like, wait for the smoke to get a little bit stronger. So we waited a second. And then you've probably seen the video where he runs out and grabs a little girl that ended up going viral later on. And the guy who was filming that was actually, he was there to like basically film human rights atrocities. And I don't even know why he came out with us behind the tank, but he did. And so he got that on video. And then after that, we went out and we got these 2 guys these two wounded Iraqi men, brought them back behind the tank as well. And so we get them behind the tank, and we're like, keep in mind, our entire plan was to throw them in a Humvee. So we're like, now we have nothing to move these guys. And all of a sudden the tank starts backing up without warning. And it's, 6 feet away from us. And so we just start dragging these dudes. And the girl, one guy was carrying the girl, and we started dragging these other two guys. I'd found like a tabletop in the middle of the road. I don't even know how there was a tabletop out there. So I threw one of the wounded guys onto it, and me and another guy started pulling it. Well, the smoke suddenly cleared, and we started taking more fire. So I was like, I have to return fire now. And so I screamed at one of the other guys. I was like, hey, drag this thing. So I turned around to actually engage the ISIS guys, because they're at 50, 75 yards away. They're right there. It's point blank range.
And are they elevated or on the ground?
Yeah, they're elevated and on the ground. They're everywhere, and on our flank. There's literally dozens and dozens of bodies in the street everywhere. Like, you're in their kill zone. You're in the kill box. And so as I turn around, one of the guys screams, and the guy who we were carrying on the tabletop, he fell off. So I turn around. The tank's about to run him over. I grab him. I roll him out of the way of the tank, but I can't keep pulling him. There's just no way I can pull him fast enough. It's just not possible to go faster than the tank. And there's no time to get him up, do a buddy carry or anything like that. And so this tank is about to run him over. I roll him out of the way, and he just kind of like, the tank's rolling past him, and he kind of like looks up at me, and we make eye contact. And I was just like, I basically just communicated. I just shook my head and I said, I'm sorry, man. We can't get you, because there was too much incoming fire. I knew that if I went in front of the tank and tried to grab him, I would 100% die. And I also knew that if I went up there and tried to get him, if the tank fired, it would kill me as well. Because the tank was also actively firing. So we have no ear pro in, and there's this tank firing, firing its live cannon and all that jazz.
I'm surprised you can hear me now.
What? It's only because of the headphones. No, I definitely have tinnitus. But yeah, so I looked at this guy. I was like, hey man, I'm sorry. And it was just like, I'd made a lot of decisions in my life to like, hey, I'm going to help somebody. Hey, I'm going to save somebody. I'd never made a decision in my life to say, hey, I can't save you. And I know the guy was going to die, and he did die. So we had to leave the guy. I stepped kind of back into my position behind the tank, and was just like, I'm walking backwards at this time. And I'm like, just kind of still processing, like, what the hell? I totally even forgot to return fire. And so seconds after I, tell this guy, hey, I'm sorry, bullet comes out, or a burst of machine gun fire comes in, takes my leg out from underneath me. It was a 5.56 bullet, so small bullet, went right through my calf. Didn't hit the bone, didn't hit the arteries or anything, but I didn't know that at the time. So yeah, my leg went out from underneath me. I was like, oh, I've just been shot. And I fell down behind the tank. And again, this is on video too, which is crazy. But I fall down behind the tank, and I kind of look at my leg, and I'm going, oh my word, is my leg snapped in half? Did it hit the bone? Because you know how it is. When bullets come in, they make that cracking sound. So I was like, well, did my leg crack too? But then all the guys start screaming at me, and they're like, dude, get up, get up. So I turn around and I look, and there's the tank is 2 feet away. Yeah, dude, it 100% would have ran me over. It was 3 feet away, 3 feet away. So I pop back up, and I'm like, well, I just hope my leg holds together. And it did, thank God. And yeah, we just kept on moving back. I threw a tourniquet on. And as we were moving back, another thing kind of happened. So the day before, on June 1st, this father had come to us, and he said, my daughters were just killed in front of me. And he said, one of my daughters, they shot her head off, was how it was translated to us. And when we got out into the street, we saw two girls that fit the description of his daughters. And one of them had been shot in the back of the head, and her face, from her hairline up here, from her forehead's hairline down to her jaw, her entire face was gone. The exit wound had just blown her entire face off. And as I was walking back, so we had seen that, and it was just, obviously it's a terrible sight. But I was putting my tourniquet on, and I actually tripped over her body as I was throwing the tourniquet on, and I looked down right between my legs, and she's, her face is right there. Sorry. And so we kept moving back. The tank moved back. So we're moving back to our mission at this point is, hey, just get back to safety. Just get back to Iraqi army lines. The Americans are still bringing in the rain, which is amazing. The only reason we're alive is because of them. So, yeah, I appreciate those guys for sure. But then we got basically parallel to where the Iraqi army position was. And we had to make it across this street. And because, again, we didn't have a Humvee, we didn't have any way to communicate with the tank to cover us. Basically, somebody needed to send a Humvee to rescue the team. Because if you cross that open area, you're going to get shot. Well, I started getting really lightheaded. I started seeing stars. And I'd passed out in training and stuff. So like I knew, I was like, okay, like the clock's ticking on me right now. And I wasn't sure if it was from blood loss or from the heat, because we were also the hair on our hands and like the light hair on our faces and stuff was being burned off from the heat of the tank. And I was already shot. And so I was like, well, if I get shot again, like I'm kind of expendable at this point. I'm kind of useless to the team. So I was like, I'll go across the street. I'll run. I'll make the run for it. So we're screaming at the Iraqis like, hey, send a Humvee, but nobody's moving. So I was like, hey, I'm going to move across. And I said, so then, yeah, I sprinted across this road. I hobbled as fast as I could. And again, this was on video too. The whole it's just bizarre that all this stuff is even on video. But
so, just real quick, a lot of stuff's on video. Have you posted it, or is it viewable? Or
yeah, it's on my like Instagram. It's on a million different places. It's the whole thing went viral. And which is bizarre. We can get into that later. But so I basically hobble across the street as fast as I can, and you can hear it in the video. You can hear all the snaps and stuff of ISIS fighters trying to shoot me. Luckily, I made it across the street. Did not get hit a second time, and I started screaming at the Iraqis. I was like, "Hey, they need a Humvee! They need a Humvee!" I saw a Humvee. I saw them start passing the word. I was like, "Hey, all right, they got a Humvee. We're good to go." So then I drop on my face. There's a couple medics there, a couple of other FBR medics that are there, and they start working on my leg, which was excruciating. But then I saw a Humvee pass me on the road, and it was heading back out to help those guys. And so I was like, all right, cool, mission accomplished. Like we made it out. And then sure enough, so we were able to save, the one little girl and, the one man. But I mean, there were still at least 4 people that we saw that we just couldn't do it. We didn't have the resources. Yeah.
Dude, I got to tell you, I mean, like hearing that, and I'm sure the listeners in the same, like you just sitting here, it's just like, holy fuck, I mean, that's a hell of a story. I mean, even from somebody who has interviewed quite a few people in the last couple of years that have some pretty amazing stories. I mean, that's right up there with any of them. In terms of, your ability to, I hate to use the word process because I think it's overused a little bit, but your ability to deal with that, has there been an issue with seeing that amount of civilian catastrophe and just scourge of society that that was on display there? Is that something that's bothered you, or have you been able to deal with that fairly well? Is that something that that you deal with today? Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, it's something that I've learned to manage, but I know that it's never going to go away. But I'm also very intentional about dealing with it.
How do you deal with it?
Well, several ways. So, backing up just a little bit to May 4th, when we first went into the city, there was an instance where an ISIS fighter or an ISIS sniper shot a little girl in the head, and the bullet went through her temple and came out her eyeball. She was wearing this bright yellow dress. Clearly, knowing the mindset of a 9 or 10-year-old girl, she probably had saved that dress. This was for the Liberation Day. This was the one dress I get to wear when we leave ISIS, right? But she'd been shot. And as she was laying there unconscious, the team was working on her. I was completely useless at this point because, the real medics were handling it. I started crying. I held her hand because I didn't know what else to do. I fixed her dress so she'd be modest, even though she was unconscious. And I just kind of like held her hand and I started crying because I was like, I don't know. It's like, what do you do? What do you do? It was horrible. And that was the one time that I kind of lost it in a combat zone. It was like,
did she make it?
She ended up living, which is amazing. Yeah, absolutely amazing. Some of the guys actually went back and met her, which is amazing. Wow. So she had a little patch on her eye, but yeah, incredible. But but then I turned my heart off to it. You turn your mind off to it. I hadn't flipped that switch yet because I wasn't expecting that level of brutality, and I'd never seen anything like that. that bad before. Um, and so I flipped that switch. So it was fine to deal with when I was in Iraq, in Mosul. But I knew, I knew that when I came home, I was going to struggle with kind of processing all of it for sure. So several things were very cathartic for me. One was I talked about it pretty much from the moment that I got home. My parents picked me up from the airport in Chicago, and I was on crutches, and I did my best to try and explain it. And writing the book was also extremely cathartic for me. I poured my heart and my soul out on those pages. I know that sounds corny, but it's true. And as I probably wept 20 times while writing this book.
Do either of your parents have any fucking hair left? Your
They
mom's
do,
got to
yeah.
be ready to fucking strangle you.
Dude, you want to know what? You want to know what's the greatest thing ever? My mother, first of all, she's the greatest thing ever. I call her the ultimate Spartan mother because I've gone and done the SEAL thing. So she's and also my dad was in the Air Force Reserves and he flew C-130s. So he'd been over to Iraq, during 2003, 2004. But she has never once. My mother has never once said like, "Hey, like, don't be a hero," or like, "Are you sure you have to go do this?" Never, never. It's always been,
Go
you,
kick some fucking ass.
yeah, you
That's
go do what you
awesome,
got to
dude.
do. She's amazing. And the true story. So right after I got shot, so I have T-Mobile, and it's got a really great international plan. So if anybody needs an
We're
international plan,
sponsored by T-Mobile.
I'm not sponsored by T-Mobile, but I love it so much. Go check it out. So I was in Iraq, and the cell phone towers had been set up on the other side of the river, and so I had reception. So uh, I knew there had been some cameras around. I didn't know it beforehand, but I saw afterwards that people were filming it. So I was like, okay, there's a really good chance that my mom's going to find out that I just got shot. And the last thing I want her to know is, or last thing I want her to think is that I'm killed. So I'm actually in the ambulance, a few minutes later. I'm like, I'm stabilized. Everything's good. I know the mission's over. And they're transporting me back to this bombed out mosque, which is being used as an aid station. So I call my mom and I say, "Hey, mom, I'm fine. Don't freak out. I just got injured. I just got shot. It was a small bullet. Everything's totally fine. I'm completely stable. Everything's good." So she's like, and so I said, I just got shot in the calf. And my mother's first response was, "Well, at least you didn't get shot in the bull." And I was like,
Jesus
"What? Calf and bull?" I was like, "Oh my word!" I was like, "You were
Christ.
the
Smart ass mom.
dude." She's amazing. I love my mom to death. Um, but yeah, so going back to kind of dealing with it when I got home, I stayed with my parents for a little bit and I wrote the book and I talked about all this stuff. And in the book I'm not talking about, oh yeah, we were in there kicking bad guys asses, and it's not like that at all. It's like I was terrified, but here's how I dealt with it, and I failed in this instance, but here's how I kept going, kind of thing. And so that was very cathartic. But man, like, to be perfectly honest, man, there's a part of my soul, if you will, going real deep. There's a part of my soul that will never come back from there. And but the reason I brought up the girl with who'd been shot in the back of the head and her face was blown off. When I was writing the book, even when I do stuff now, I see that girl every single day in my head, and she is the literal faceless victim of the terrible, horrible, violent things that people do to each other, whether it's ISIS or the Burma army or the Venezuelan government, whatever. And she is the reason. She is the reason why I keep going. She's the reason why Stronghold is what it is, because I want her death to mean something. That faceless girl, nobody will ever know her name. Nobody will ever care. History, she'll be forgotten to history, but she matters to me, and I remember that. So there's a sadness in a yeah, a hurt that's there that'll never go away. But I use that as a drive to continue doing what I'm doing with Stronghold Rescue and Relief. You know, that's why I'm willing to go out there and do stuff that's a little bit crazy, because you want to know what? If we don't, there's gonna be another little faceless girl. There's gonna be another person that gets raped. There's gonna be another family torn apart. There's gonna be more babies that are killed. And this is stuff that I've seen in multiple places, and it has to be stopped. And again, the motto of Stronghold is, the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. I consider myself one of the good guys, so I have to do something. And that's the way that I find meaning in all of that horror, is to use it for something good.
I got to tell you, man. I mean, hearing your story and just you recounting your experiences over there and sharing it with us is to say that it's moving and inspiring is a gross understatement. It's an absolutely captivating story, phenomenal book, amazing what you're doing now. And fuck, man, my hat's off to you. I think what you're doing is truly fucking remarkable, and I appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of moving on, you were shot. You get essentially sent back to the States. I'm assuming what happened after.
Well, not right away.
Yeah,
So it's kind of funny. So I got shot, and then there were no proper hospitals or anything like that in Mosul. The only hospital there was completely controlled by ISIS. That was where I'd been shot from. So there was a group of Mennonite volunteers that were out there. So dude, this is crazy. So I get hit. I go back to this bombed out mosque. I'm in this bombed out mosque. And you kind of imagine, when you're in the SEALs and you're training for medical situations, you're like, yeah, I'm gonna throw my tourniquet on, and then my 18 Delta corpsman's gonna come over and he's gonna he's gonna fix me up, and my boy's got my back, kind of thing. Well, no, I went to this bombed out mosque, and there's a bunch of there was Iraqi army doctors, which are very competent, they're good dudes, and then there were two Mennonite female nurses who were there volunteering, and they got the hair buns, the long blue dresses, the whole 9 yards.
God, it's a trip.
Yeah, and we'd met them before because they were volunteering in the city, man. So it was so funny. And I was just like, okay, well, here I am. So these guys are speaking Arabic, and then these Mennonite women are working on my leg. So then the Mennonites were actually going back to Erbil that day, back into Kurdistan, northern Iraq, and so they drove me. So I rode with them. And so I went up to Erbil, and then a couple of my buddies that were there at the safe house, my buddy Justin and Bradley, they picked me up kind of at this border area and took me to an actual hospital. And the first hospital we went to was completely, overcrowded, and from people from Mosul and from everywhere else, and so they couldn't get me in. But they loaded me up into a real ambulance and took me to a different hospital. And so keep in mind, I still have blood on me. I'm covered in sweat and filth. I haven't changed clothes in a week. I'm disgusting. I'm covered in dirt and sweat. My pant leg was cut off of me, or half of it was cut off of me. And so they take me to this other hospital, and they finish. They cut the rest of my clothes off of me, and they put some of them in a bag, which I just ended up throwing it all away because it was so rancid. But yeah, so I spent a night in a Kurdish hospital in a ward that was just for people who had been wounded in the fighting around Mosul. So I was with a bunch of Peshmerga soldiers. And so I spent the night there, and man, that was an insane experience because the power kept on going out at night, during the night. And, I'm in this room with 20 other wounded guys.
How was the food there?
They didn't give us, they didn't give us anything. But yeah, so I'm sitting there, and, they turn the lights out, and then the power starts going out. Well, all these guys who were wounded, way worse than I was. Truly, it was just a flesh wound. It wasn't a big deal. These other guys, man, shot in the hip, shot in the shoulder, shot in the abdomen,
shattered bones and shit.
Yeah, dude, these guys at night, the screaming and the crying was something I'll never forget. The horror of it all. Guys were, and I knew, enough words, guys were screaming for their moms, kind of thing, all night.
God
and
damn.
it was just in the dark, and I'm just sitting there what the hell, what's going on?
That's some SEER school torture shit,
dude.
Right
it was very much like that. It was just all night, and then in the middle of the night, this guy walks into the room. It's pitch black, and he walks in with a flashlight, and he starts shining it on people. And I mean, I don't know who this guy is. There's no security there. This could be an ISIS fighter who just is going to murder everybody.
Yeah.
I had no idea. So he starts looking at everybody. He shines the light over, and he sees me. And then he just keeps the flashlight on me, walks right over to me. And I'm like, oh, okay, who's this guy? And I'm the only white dude, red beard. So he walks over to me, and he speaks English, and he's like, are you Ephraim? And I'm like, yeah. It was Kurdish intelligence. And he sits down. He's like, I need to talk to you. And they were concerned. The Kurdish intelligence was concerned that I was an ISIS fighter.
You're like, yes, I smoked weed. Yes, I told my recruiter.
Yeah. Exactly. But yeah, so he was sitting there and he started not forcefully, but he started asking me a bunch of questions and he was like writing stuff down. And then he eventually, I just started telling him the same story I'm telling you, basically like who I am, what I'm doing. And then he kind of put his notebook away. But basically, I fit the description of an ISIS fighter. I'm a white guy with, with a big beard. And at the time, we like wearing tactical beards because it's like that's what the cool kids do nowadays, right? But ISIS were in the war in ISIS. The ISIS guys were the only ones who had beards. So all the Iraqi army guys, they all like their Saddam mustaches, like Saddam Hussein mustaches, but they kept their faces um, trimmed up. So I was a white guy with a beard, so they thought it was ISIS potentially. But I explained to them who I was, and it was totally fine. But then the next morning, they wheeled me into this room, which was like a proper medical lab facility thing. It was actually real clean, real nice, lots of equipment, and they did a debridement, basically cutting away all the dead flesh and the stuff where the bullet had burned the wound and everything. But the doctors started asking me, they're like, "Oh, you're Peshmerga, you're Peshmerga." I was like, "No, I'm not Peshmerga. I fought with the Iraqi army. I didn't fight with the Kurds. I was in Mosul." And they're like, "No, no, no, no. Peshmerga means those who face death." And I wish I already knew, but they're like, Peshmerga means those who face death, and you fought for us. Thank you. And so each one of these doctors, man, it was amazing. Each one of these doctors, they reached out and they touched me and they said, "Thank you,
Oh shit.
thank you." They reached out, each touched me, "Thank you for fighting for us," kind of thing. And it was just like,
Wow.
holy cow. And then they sedated me and then went through the whole process, and then I was out of there the next day, which I had to go buy my own crutches because they didn't have any, they didn't have any available. So I basically spent 2 weeks there at the safe house, keeping my leg elevated as much as I could. That was actually the most excruciating time because the leg locked up. And yeah, I mean, I was in so much pain. Sometimes I would see in stars. It was bad, but yeah. Then 2 weeks later, I flew home. My parents picked me up from Chicago O'Hare, and yeah, and then that was it. It was like, all right, cool, that was it. And then I didn't have any physical therapy. I didn't have anybody to help me out or anything. So I basically did my own physical therapy and went to a local Menominee Falls high school track. And I got to the point where I could walk on it and then I'd run on it and then I'd run too much on it and then it would lock back up and, just being stupid. But yeah. And then it was all right, cool. And then I finished the book and a few months later, started working in Burma.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And at that point, had Stronghold Rescue been established?
Not officially on all the paperwork. So the idea was still there. It was still there. So yeah, again, so I volunteered with FBR in Iraq, but it's like they didn't pay for any of my stuff. Like it was Stronghold kind of thing. But Stronghold really formed and really got its roots when I went to Burma in 2018 and started working with the people there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, as we run a little bit short on time here, I'd love to have you back and get into that. Honestly, I mean, that sounds like a
I'd love to,
podcast
man.
in and of itself.
Yeah, tons of stuff going on over there, man.
Yeah. So if you could, you've talked, a fair bit about kind of what you guys do. If you could kind of 30-second elevator pitch Stronghold so that people, if they want to come, check you out and help out and donate or what have you, kind of what you do and how to find you and all that.
Yeah. So our mission is in a word or in one line is we help families that are caught in war zones. And our mission is to send in former special operations military guys to go in, advise, assist, and accompany the people. We build up their capabilities. Everything we do is we invest in the people themselves. And that's, we do several mission sets, whether that's defense, and evacuation, emergency medical stuff, and then also we bring in emergency medical supplies. Our mission in Burma is to, we have a rescue team of 12 men who are local men who live in Burma, who are there to defend, evacuate, and support their people. And so we constantly are doing missions with them. On the Colombia-Venezuela border, on the Colombian side, we have a children's refuge where we serve 3,000 kids every single month. They get clean water, and super simple basic education, some hygiene stuff. And then inside Venezuela, we have teams that smuggle in medicine, food, into different places that you've seen in the news, but we don't advertise that we're involved in certain stuff. So everything we do is all about enabling the capabilities of the people that are there because we want to have a long-term lasting impact even when we're long gone. And we call it charity with dignity, enabling the people to stand on their own.
I think it's great. And I mean, to me, that's a far better mechanism for foreign policy than sending all of our fucking troops over there to do it. And then you end up having power vacuums like everywhere we've been for the last 20 fucking years.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think it's fucking awesome. In terms of funding, I mean, I'm assuming you're solely off of civilian donors and charity trusts and things like that. There's no grants or federal funding or anything like that. Right?
No, there's no grants, no federal funding. Our entire support base comes from just individual donors all across the U.S. who each pitch in a little bit. So I've worked with multiple organizations. There's so much stuff we can get into the humanitarian stuff that I haven't even talked about. We can definitely do another podcast on. That entire world is crazy. One of the things that I've learned though is you can't, and that Stronghold doesn't do, is we do not sit there and constantly try and get donations from uber wealthy people or from the government. That's not our policy. That's not the way we like to do things, or that I like to do things. And the reason for that is because it's inconsistent and it puts too much of a burden on one person. Giving to charity should be fun, it should be enjoyable, and I want people to give to multiple organizations. So I don't want there to be competition. You're wearing a NavySealFund.org shirt. I want people to give to the NavySealFund.org, and I would like for them to give a little bit to Stronghold. So what we do with Stronghold is we ask people, if the people are interested, we ask, hey, 50 cents a day. That's $15 a month, and that's one meal. That's one meal at a restaurant. If you legitimately saw somebody starving on the street, I'm not saying necessarily somebody who's made bad choices in life, but I'm saying like, hey, somebody who legitimately like needs your help because life has been terrible to them, would you give them one meal? Of course you would, right? So that's all we ask people to do. Hey, if you want to give 50 cents a day or $1 a day, that's all we ask. And if you do that, as a thank you, we send all of our donors, they get 2 of our Stronghold t-shirts. They're athletic fit, real nice shirts. That's a picture of it right there.
Go to the YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Or choke yourself.
And so we send that. So because we want people to also show what they stand for. So again, I've said it, this is the third time I've said it, but our motto is the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. And that's what it says on the back of our shirt. And on the front, it says Stronghold Rescue and Relief. And I want people to just pitch in a little bit, because imagine if you just had 1,000 people who each just gave $1 a day. You could have a massive, massive impact. But more importantly, the way that we run things like a special operations unit. We run things like a SEAL team. Highly efficient, no extra people. We don't bring in volunteerists. We don't bring in people that don't need to be there. And we don't invest and put the donor money toward things that aren't going to have a long-term impact.
Yeah.
I'm not going to buy somebody a fish. I'm going to teach them how to fish.
Yeah. I think it's fucking great, man. I will wear the complimentary t-shirt you brought with fucking pride for sure.
Awesome.
I appreciate you bringing it. There's one quick kickback question. What were you eating when you were in the Mosul area? I joked about the food in the hospital, but it made me think, like, what the fuck were you sustaining your life on?
Well, we would bring out so some of the guys that we had out there were actually fairly decent cooks. So we'd bring out like propane tanks, and they would cook like little like stews and things like that. But a lot of times we were just eating Iraqi army rations, which this is really bizarre, but it's little styrofoam. They would have hot styrofoam little bowls or whatever with rice and like a few beans and then like a bite of meat. So it was just white rice, like crappy beans and like a little bite of bony meat. Yeah. And they would throw them all in plastic shopping bags and then drive them out to the troops at the front line. Oh. So it was really bizarre. Yeah.
Like no KFC, huh?
There was no KFC, unfortunately. Wild we did see a Mosul McDonald's, which is cool.
That's wild, man. All right, where can people find you to get involved, and also how many staff members, board members? I mean, how many people are involved in your organization?
Yeah, so for the most part, I run pretty much everything, but I have a handful of people that come out, 4 to 5 that'll come out and volunteer with different missions and stuff like that. Our main focus is on enabling. So my staff in Venezuela and Colombia, it's all Venezuelan refugees, 100%. My staff in Burma, it's all 100% Burmese or people that live in Burma. And then I have a handful of volunteers that will come out with me. So we're not a traditional organization where we're like, hey, we're looking for volunteers. We don't do that. We fly low. We fly under the radar. I need guys with special operations background who are not looking for a fight. but who are capable of defending themselves and others if things go wrong.
Yeah.
But people can find us at strongholdrescue.org. And then you can also find us on Instagram at Stronghold Rescue. And obviously, I'm on social media with just my name, Ephraim Mattos, at Ephraim Mattos.
Well, fucking A, my man. Again, the stories that you tell, the book, the picture that you've painted, in your, are you even 30 yet?
27.
Yeah, I mean, at fucking 27 years old.
Just a baby, I know.
But, the amount of shit that you've been through and seen and whatever at the tender age of 27 is pretty fucking remarkable. I can tell you as a guy in my 40s, who's done a few things, it's a humbling and impressive couple of hours that we've sat here and being able to hear you tell your story. And I appreciate the fuck out of you coming to do that.
Well, dude, thanks for having me on, man. This is huge.
Yeah,
for me
absolutely.
as well.
Absolute pleasure. So, real quick, I'd also like to wrap up in shouting out our sponsors once again. Origin Labs, the maker of all of Jocko's products. Super clean supplements, phenomenal American company. They make the Discipline Go, Jocko White Tea, as well as a number of other supplements under the Jocko brand and the Origin Labs brand. They make boots, gis, and jeans as well now that are all very, very high quality American-made products. They've been a great sponsor of the show from get-go. Bubs Naturals, 10% of all sales, MCT oil powder as well as collagen powder go to the Glenn Doherty Memorial Foundation. Glenn was a close friend of mine again, who was killed in Benghazi, and 10% of those sales from Bubs Naturals goes to that foundation. So both companies, phenomenal companies. I encourage you to get both of their products and help support both the podcast and everything that they have going on. I appreciate it. Check out the book. I'm going to hold it up here for you YouTube punks. City of Death. One thing I did notice in this, it making me feel old. The quality of the fucking pictures in here is remarkable.
Our photo section is awesome.
Well, when you look at my books from back in the earlier 2000s, like the camera technology has changed dramatically.
Yeah,
my pictures look like old Vietnam shit.
Yeah, this book was put together great, and also too, I co-authored it with Scott McEwen, who wrote American Sniper.
Yeah,
so that was incredible to be able to work with him on all this and make sure everything was done first class. I think people will really enjoy it.
Oh, for sure they will. Lots of stuff that we did not cover in the book. Absolutely worth going and picking it up again. City of Death. You can find it on Amazon. Strongholdrescue.org for his organization. Help out if you can. Again, at least if you can spare that 50 cents a day, get a couple of free t-shirts and help make a difference. So appreciate everybody tuning in. Again, Ephraim, I appreciate you spending your time out of your schedule to come here. Most importantly to the listener, we wouldn't be able to bring you these remarkable episodes week after week, month after month, if not for your support of tuning in and lending your ear for the few hours that we flap our gums. So I am humbled and excruciatingly grateful for your guys' support. I do really, really appreciate you guys tuning in. So keep up the good work, Mr. Mattos. Listeners, you guys keep crushing life. And until next time, this is Mic Drop.